This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, William Crawley, and produced by Jill Collins. The editor was Tara McDermott, and the technical producer, Nikki Edwards.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcuse, and this is Information Radio. We're live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. We're on air until 8:37. Let's get to headlines straight away with Heather Wells. In a moment. We'll connect with Heather in a moment. Why don't we start with our forecast here? In the city of Winnipeg today, sunny early this morning. You can see that. It's nice and clear out there. Mix of sun and cloud, though with a 70% chance of showers late this morning once again in our forecast, and a risk of a thunderstorm as well with that. It'll be windy, winds west 40 to 60 and a high today of 20. Well, let's say good morning to the team. Good morning to Corey Funk. Corey's directing the program, and we'll be covering the commute. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who is behind the controls of the show, our technical producer, and Abby also covers the forecasts on the show. And good morning to the YouTube team. There's a crew back there now. Good morning, Brad Lillies, and good morning to Kevin Nipatebo. Nice to have you all along. All right, now let's go to Heather Wells in our news center with our headlines. Hi, Heath.
Hello, good morning. Well, crews in Winnipeg are working overtime to prevent you from having to slap mosquitoes. 14 ground crews and 4 helicopters have been busy spraying sites with larvicide. Dave Wade in Winnipeg's insect control branch says recent downpours have, in fact, delayed their work and created a lot more standing water, but he's confident mosquitoes won't be a big problem when warmer weather hits us in Winnipeg. So we'll hear more about what he has to say. All this wet weather as well is making for a soggy mess of outdoor sports. We're going to hear how it's impacted disc sports like Ultimate, and Winnipeg's Minor Baseball Association also having its schedule dampened because of all this wet weather. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we are on air, as I mentioned, until 8:37 with you, and thank you again for joining us this morning on Information Radio. Let's talk about what's going to be on the program. In the first hour of the show, what does being in a beautiful space or place actually do for our mental health? We'll have that discussion on our mental health column, so stay tuned. I'm thinking about Assiniboine Park or the White Shell or even just a beautiful park in your neighborhood. How does that actually help us? Also, a little bit later in the program, a new biography explores how a teenager obsessed with federal politics has been calculating a lifelong path to becoming prime minister. We're going to hear more about Pierre Poilievre, A Political Life.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Devery Jacobs went from wanting to be an actor, feeling like she could never be an actor, to now being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe twice. Devery will be here for a conversation about her career, about her new film Backspot, and her life as a real-life gymnast.
I was basically one level away from nationals.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. We begin in France. A bugler plays the last post as Canadian war veterans, government and military officials and dignitaries remember those who died. The event at Canada's War Cemetery in Benny-sur-Mer is part of this week's 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. More than 2,000 Canadian soldiers are buried there. The CBC's senior international correspondent, Margaret Evans, was at the service. And Margaret, what is it like where you are?
Well, it is obviously a very solemn place, Marcia, but it's also very, very beautiful. There are 2,048 headstones in this Canadian War Cemetery. The flowers in each row perfectly tended, and the cemetery is surrounded by trees and beautiful fields full of wheat and canola, so it's very, very peaceful. We saw the Canadian veterans come in a row of honor, each one getting applause as many of them were wheeled to their place of honor.
Margaret, what are some of those war veterans saying?
Yeah, we spoke with a number of them, and there are, in fact, 13 Second World War veterans from Canada here. Not all of them are D-Day veterans. 8 of them are veterans of the Normandy campaign, and 4 of them did come ashore on D-Day. Benny-sur-Mer, this cemetery here, is just a bit inland from Juno Beach, where so many Canadians landed. And we spoke to Captain William Wilson, who will be 100 in the fall. He was a seaman gunner during that D-Day landing. He was on the ships accompanying the landing troops in, but he had a view from the water.
The surface of the ocean was covered with ships and boats and landing craft, and all pretty well organized, streams all following each other to get killed. Nobody's ever seen anything like that in the history of the world, and I was there to see it.
One of the things he told us, which was echoed by other veterans on this trip, was that they do worry that the world is going to forget them when the generation of veterans moves on. But the people in the villages around and some of the students from local schools here and from schools in Canada say that won't happen. They won't allow this generation to be forgotten or what they were fighting for.
Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Margaret Evans in Benny-sur-Mer. CBC Radio will have special coverage of tomorrow's anniversary. Nella Ayad and John Northcott will bring you highlights of the official ceremony and give you an in-depth look at the events of June 6th, 1944. That is here on CBC Radio 1 at 1 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Atlantic, 2:30 in Newfoundland, or you can watch coverage of the ceremony live beginning at 4 a.m. Eastern on CBC News Network, CBC Gem, Explore, or on YouTube. The Bank of Canada will make its latest interest rate announcement later this morning. It has held it at 5% for almost a year now. But the bank is seeing some progress in its efforts to rein in inflation. And many economists think we could see a cut in the key overnight lending rate. CBC's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
It's been a rough couple of years. Canadian households have been clobbered by a double whammy of rising prices and increased borrowing costs. Many, especially those with a variable rate mortgage, have been waiting for some kind of sign that the Bank of Canada is ready to cut rates. At its last meeting, Bank Governor Tiff Macklem would only say this.
As we consider how much longer to hold the policy rate at the current level, we're looking for evidence that the recent further easing in underlying inflation will be sustained.
Since then, inflation data came in better than expected. The core measures the bank is focused on are working their way back to target. GDP has remained flat but avoided dipping into an outright recession.
The Bank of Canada has the green light to cut rates right now.
That's Frances Donald, chief economist at Manulife Investment. She says there's still a chance the bank waits until next month to be sure inflationary pressures really are coming to heel. But Donald says the bigger question is how much and how quickly the bank will reduce rates once it starts.
We think they might have to cut rates as much as 8 times in the next 2 years. That's a really different story than do they start now or in 6 weeks.
So this morning's release should provide more than just today's rate. Watch for details about how the bank thinks the next few quarters are going to look. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
An Italian judge has upheld a slander conviction against Amanda Knox.
Do you want to say something?
Media swarm around the American woman as she arrived at the courthouse today. Knox was the primary suspect in the 2007 killing of her British roommate. The murder trial dominated headlines in Europe and in the U.S. Knox was found guilty. She spent 4 years in jail until her conviction was annulled in 2015. But Knox was also convicted of wrongly accusing a Congolese bar owner of the murder. That is the conviction the judge upheld. Knox was issued a 3-year sentence today. It will have no practical implication because of the time already served in prison. Gaza ceasefire talks resume in Qatar today. An agreement is proving elusive. And in this country, some families with relatives in Gaza are trying to bring their loved ones here. More than 40 have arrived since the war began in October. But there are concerns about what happens once they arrive. Some Palestinians say Ottawa's promises to help them resettle are empty. Nicole Williams has more.
So hard to continue. It's hard to do anything.
23-year-old Nisreen Khalidi says it's been a nightmare to get here, and she's still struggling. She arrived in Canada from Gaza last November. Some family killed in the war, others still stuck there. But Khalidi says it's been difficult to even survive here. The federal government does offer work permits, study permits, and temporary health coverage for Palestinian newcomers, but Khalidi says it's taking months to access any of that.
Literally, I lost my job, I lost my home, everything I lost. Then I realized I lost my life.
Nahid Sadiq volunteers to help families resettle here and says many Palestinians who come here have urgent medical needs. They end up on the hook for hundreds of dollars in hospital bills because they're without health coverage.
They realize that no, this may not even be a safe haven for us because we still have so many hurdles.
Immigration Minister Mark Miller says people are entitled to support when they get here. If that's not happening, there's a problem.
We would probably work directly with those groups and making sure that if there are problems in the system, that we get them ironed out quickly.
Advocates say they're hopeful the minister will act to provide Palestinians even the basics needed to survive. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Toronto.
Officials from BC are traveling to Washington state today. They are meeting with their U.S. counterparts to find ways to prevent flooding from two rivers. Communities on both sides of the border were inundated with water in November last year. The once-in-a-century atmospheric river caused landslides and major damage. But as Georgie Smythe reports, some BC communities are looking for more help from the federal government.
These are the same citizens that Ottawa has. And if they're not going to keep them safe, then we will.
Princeton Mayor Spencer Coyne is annoyed. He's one of 3 BC mayors who asked for millions of dollars from the federal government's Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. Princeton, Merritt and Abbotsford wanted to build higher dikes and pump stations to prevent future flooding. Mayor Michael Getz from Merritt says the request went nowhere.
We have completely been ghosted.
In a statement to CBC News, Infrastructure Canada, who oversees the applications, says it has funded BC projects in the past, but that their fund gets more requests for cash than money it actually has. In 2021, about 18,000 people were evacuated in BC after floods swamped homes and landslides damaged every major highway connecting the Lower Mainland to the rest of Canada. The 3 communities say they're now on the hook for much of the cost to adapt to more intense and destructive weather.
And we need to have all strategies on the table.
But Tara Martin, a professor of conservation science at the University of British Columbia, says her research points less to rebuilding and more to retreating from disaster-prone areas.
The purposeful movement of people and infrastructure in response to hazards.
At least everyone can agree doing nothing isn't an option. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, hello, Winnipeg, and good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Thanks for being with us. So here we are at Wednesday morning. It is June the 5th, and this hour on the show, we're going to be talking about beautiful spaces and beautiful places and why, when we're in those kinds of spaces, why did they help our mental health? What's behind that? That's the topic of our mental health column, so stay tuned. We'll dig into that. In addition, you might recall that last week we had a conversation about when women should start testing for breast cancer. And there's a huge national conversation right now about lowering the screening age for women who are at the highest risk levels to be able to self-refer themselves to have mammograms. So that's the topic of our medical column with Dr. Bhartwaj Bhardwaj, and we'll put it in the context of Manitoba. Last week we spoke with a breast cancer survivor who was diagnosed at 42. So stay tuned. That's all coming up this hour. Right now, let's get into other news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, we are just learning about a large police presence in Niverville, just south of Winnipeg. One man is dead after an officer-involved shooting there. It happened around 3 this morning. RCMP and Winnipeg police are on the scene. A woman is in custody. They say a man took off in a stolen vehicle, and the area of Dover's Run in Niverville is going to be blocked off for much of the day. We're going to bring you the latest details as we get them about that situation in Niverville, just developing this morning. And a court-ordered forensic psychiatrist is set to testify today about the mental state of an admitted serial killer. Another expert told the murder trial yesterday of Jeremy Skibitsky that he was suffering from schizophrenia when he killed 4 Indigenous women in Winnipeg in 2022. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
Heather, anytime, of course, this goes without saying, but I will say it on the air so listeners know, anytime you have updates on Niverville that you need to get to air, given how developing that is and you were just learning about it, pop on into the studio, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Heather Wells in our news department this morning. We are in Studio 15 with the show here. And once again, Abby, we're waiting for rain, but we started with a beautiful sky. I heard you took a picture.
Yeah, beautiful sky. Studio 15, it's 15 degrees. Warren, Kevin, I forwarded a video to Kevin earlier of, the sun just trying to make its appearance in the downtown. And
beautiful.
If you like watching on YouTube, you should be seeing that roll right now.
There it
That's
is.
like the city just
so this
waking
was
up.
Early this morning. It is really lovely.
Look at that, partial gold in the sky. We're expecting like that sunrise to make its appearance later this morning.
I really found that this is the week where it's for the first time, and maybe it's because it's been so gray and rainy, but I'm really appreciating the time of year now where my outside lights that I usually would have to depend on at 4 a.m. when I'm heading out, outside for first look, I don't need them. I don't need to have them on. By 4:30, it's already bright.
Yeah, it's already bright by 4:30 for sure. Today we're going to see sunny skies crawl in on us. Now, as the day progresses, we should be expecting a mix of sun and clouds with a 70% chance of showers later this morning into the afternoon period. And there's also a risk of thunderstorm in the forecast during this period. It will be breezy though, so we'll be seeing a high of about 20 degrees today. And tonight will be mainly cloudy with a chance of showers also into the evening period. And it's going to stay breezy with temperatures dropping to about 10 degrees. Now, for the northern part of the province, we have a rainfall warning for which includes to the lake at Churchill. We hear that heavy rain with amounts of 50 to 80 millimeters expected by Thursday evening, and this rain will be tapering off either in mid-Thursday or into the night on Thursday. We have also warnings that localized flooding in low-lying areas is possible, and residents should be cautious near rivers, creeks, and even cuvettes as a risk of washouts in those areas are possible. But right now in Winnipeg, it is 15 degrees. We expect in a sunny start, a transition into a mix of sun and clouds, possible showers, a risk of thunderstorm. It's going to be breezy, and we're going to get to 20. It's like a mix today.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the morning commute. Corey Funk is in studio. Hello to you.
Hello. Once again, pretty slow commute out there this morning. Haven't heard any major issues out there. If you're walking, bike, and driving, though, you see something going on. You want to tell me what that is? Give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, maybe you're up early and you are walking the dog. We got a story for you to start the show today. If you're a pet owner, you might already think of your furry friend as a celebrity. Well, now they have the chance to become a real star. Good Neighbor Brewing Company is partnering with the Winnipeg Humane Society for a new contest, and they're calling it, I love this, Pets on Pints. It gives pet owners a chance to have your pet's face featured on a special edition can of Good Neighbor beer this summer. Rebecca Grissom is the community manager for Good Neighbor Brewing Company, and Carly Peters is director of communications and marketing for the Winnipeg Humane Society. They both sat down with CBC's Faith Fundell and Up to Speed to talk about it.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Carly Peters is with the Winnipeg Humane Society, and she joins us by phone. Hi, Carly.
Hello. Thanks for having me as well.
Let's start with the contest, Carly. How does it work?
Okay, so you have the most amazing photo of your pet. You want to go to the Winnipeg Humane Society and upload it there. And then you tell all your friends and family to go to that site. You have your own URL that you can share with your friends and vote for your pet. And every vote is $1. And so that is how we are using that as a fundraiser for the critical care here at the shelter.
Does it matter what kind of pet you have to be eligible? Like, can my I don't have one, but say someone has like a baby iguana. Can that work as well?
Yeah, eligible pets are dogs, cats, critters, birds, like main animals that we see here in the shelter. We're seeing already a lot of dogs, a lot of cats. I think I saw a rat, a couple of hamsters, a few rabbits. Yeah, those are some of the sweet photos we've already seen.
And of course, no exotic animals like lions, or I don't imagine anyone has a lion in town.
No, yeah, that would be a little questionable on our end, I think. Yeah.
Rebecca, talk about the limited edition beer. I imagine it's not going to be like tastes like a pet.
No, it's just the label that's going to be part of the collaboration. The beer itself is going to be called Pet Pals Pilsner. It's going to be a Czech-style pale ale, super clean and crisp and refreshing, with subtle floral hop notes.
Why decide to partner with the Winnipeg Humane Society to do this?
Yeah, so when they approached us, we were very excited because Good Neighbor Brewing, we love to make good beer that inspires connection and bringing people together. But in addition to that, one of our core values is being or trying to be more than just a brewery, and always choosing things that can contribute to our neighborhood. And our neighborhood could be where we are in West Broadway or our city, and in this case, supporting the great work that Winnipeg Humane Society does.
Have you had a chance to look at the number of pets on there and the votes? Because it looks like a whole bunch of money has already been raised. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, even just like watching the letterboard, I'm enthralled, and like, yeah, it's really, really cool to see the uptick already.
Carly, is it clear yet what the Humane Society hopes to use the money for?
Yeah, it will be for our regular shelter operations here, caring for the animals that come through our doors, as well as our community program. We are really looking to support keeping people and their pets together. So some of that critical community support includes our emergency food bank, our low-cost vet care and spay and neuter programs, our free behavior helpline. We, on average, look after 10,000 animals in the shelter in the community every year. And so we are always grateful for the support of the community to ensure we can do that for all of them.
Do you have a number that you're hoping to reach for in terms of how much to raise?
Yes, we actually have crushed that already in just 24 hours. We are beyond ecstatic about how well this has already taken off. I think we have already gotten over 600 entries and over 24,000 votes, which means $24,000. And we had the goal of $20,000. So we were we were just blown away by the response. And I mean, it is, I think, a Manitoba pet lover's dream. You've got an incredible local beer. Everybody loves their pets. Everybody loves the beer. Putting it together, it's just perfect.
Rebecca, totally not my cat Otto, just another cat who's named like Otto and not me. I'm asking for a friend. How do I convince people to vote for Otto's picture when my friend puts it up and enters?
Yeah, there's a URL that you can share. And actually, Carly might have better details on the best way to kind of get the word out in terms of getting votes for your pet.
Yeah, absolutely. She's correct. Like, once you get your photo uploaded, you have your own specific URL. Share it on your social media. We have someone that has gone and made like a poster with a QR code that they're putting up in their office to get people to vote for them. And just, showcase your pet's personality. Like, we love a good, like, I don't know, silly photo, whatever makes people stop and like really see your pet shine. Is probably your best bet. Yeah.
How much time do folks have to one, be able to enter, and two, to vote?
Yeah, that's right. So the contest closes on June 21st. So it's a pretty tight turnaround, 3 weeks. So we are encouraging people to upload your photos sooner than later so you have that time to get the vote.
Rebecca, do you have any plans to mark the release of the special edition cans?
Yeah, absolutely. The beers are going to be available in cans, obviously with the wonderful pets that are chosen. It's going to be in a 4-pack. They're going to be available only from Good Neighbor Brewing. We're at 110 Sherbrooke in West Broadway. And they're going to launch on Wednesday, July 17th. And then in celebration of that, we're also going to do a launch party event here at the brewery and on the patio. And so we're going to have a pet parade and a DJ announcing animals so that people can show off their pets on the patio. And then hopefully pick up the cans on their way out. If people want to feature their pet during that event, they can email us at hello@goodneighborbrewing.com. That's going to be a really, really fun event. And I would encourage people to get the cans quickly if you're wanting to get your hands on this, because we imagine that they're going to sell out pretty fast.
Appreciate the time today. Thanks, Rebecca, and take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you as well, Carly.
Good luck to Otto.
Fun stuff, right? Rebecca Grissom, Community Manager for Good Neighbor Brewing Company. Carly Peters, Director of Communications and Marketing for the Winnipeg Humane Society, on Up to Speed yesterday talking to Faith Fundal. Pets on Pines, it runs from June 3rd to 21st, and it is not too late to enter. So just to reiterate, you can find more information on the Winnipeg Humane Society's website, which is winnipeghumanesociety.ca.
Every company dreams of doubling its profit. It's almost impossible to do. Yet, some companies do it just by tweaking one tiny thing. Or coming up with a really catchy jingle.
Flop, flop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is.
Flop, flop, fizz, fizz. How companies double their profits. On Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
6:23, I'm Marcy Marcusa, and up next on the show, Assiniboine Park, Grand Beach, Steep Rock, the White Shell. Beautiful places in Manitoba. And when we spend time in places like that, you can feel it, sometimes pretty deeply. Surroundings that please and interest us can make a real difference in how we feel. But how does that work exactly? How do those things connect to our state of mind? That's the topic of today's Mental Health Column with Mark Hennick.
Hi there.
So first off, what is beauty as it relates to our surroundings and what we're talking about, and how it affects our mood?
Well, starting with the second part, the visual appeal of your surroundings, it affects your mood in a variety of ways. I mean, living in a home that's beautiful to you, that can help you to feel comfortable and secure, and that's the whole point of having a place where you can rest and recharge. Or working in an environment that's designed with a bit of energy in mind, that's been shown to help you be more productive. Exploring cities and neighborhoods that have open, inviting, enriched, beautiful spaces, that's been shown to help facilitate social connection. And so, while it's often said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, there are some common elements of beautiful spaces and the ways that these spaces make us feel.
Beauty is really the quality or qualities in either a person, a thing, or a place that gives us pleasure, either to the senses or to the mind.
That's Erin Peavy. She's an architect and health and well-being design leader at HKS in Dallas, Texas. Erin, talk to me about why some spaces are beautiful.
We all have a foundational sort of resonance with beautiful places, beautiful natural spaces, but beauty is about symmetry and balance, but also variety.
We resonate with beautiful spaces. When we enter them, they bring something out in us. They elicit feelings and reactions, which are often rooted deep in our evolutionary history, in our subconscious. But, that balance that Erin mentioned between variety and symmetry, that's interesting to me too, because it's like we find beauty in order, but not without a little bit of controlled chaos to keep things interesting.
You mentioned there are some common elements that contribute to our experience of a space as beautiful. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, for this, we can look to the field of neuroaesthetics, which is a discipline that investigates the neurobiological underpinnings of beautiful experiences. And first of all, our existing knowledge and meaning systems influence what we think of as beautiful. So to an extent, appreciation of beauty is actually learned, which also means then that it can be taught with enough exposure and attention. Sometimes the first step to finding more beauty in your life, in places as well as in people, is just to get to know them better. And then we have what's called the emotion valuation elements of beauty, which is basically how we feel when we perceive something and then how we judge our feelings about it. So various brain imaging studies have shown that sharp edges and pointy objects trigger a feeling of stress that comes from the amygdala in the brain, which is the brain's fear center. Meanwhile, round shapes tend to be perceived as more attractive. Curves, in particular, seem to signal safety. So there's how we feel in spaces and how we judge our feelings about them. And then finally, and probably most salient, are the sensory motor elements of beauty. Our sensory systems, our sight, smell, hearing, touch, taste, and actually a number of others, they can be thought of as the gatekeepers of our experience of beauty. So that's why when we see a beautiful building, hear beautiful music, smell a beautiful flower, it can quickly and really quite profoundly affect our mood. But then spaces that layer these sensory experiences, that can further compound the effect of beauty. I asked Erin Peavy about this layering of experiences.
You could argue that beautiful, ornate columns, or like, with the old school building facades that have, the brick and the texture, and when the light hits it just right, you just feel multiple levels. So many people have said, okay, well, that's too expensive, that's unnecessary. But what that's really doing is creating this really pleasant degree of complexity that resonates inside of us and helps us to feel a continuous sense of interest.
Pleasant complexity and continuous interest. I think our perception of beauty, which then affects how we think and feel in that space, it's really incredibly multifaceted and also dynamic. It moves. And that's great news because it means that there's actually many potential recipes to create more beauty in your life and have more of that positive reaction.
I know I keep asking you to elaborate, but can you talk more about the sensory experience of beauty?
Yeah, I mean, we heard Erin just talk about light hitting the texture of the bricks just right, that sort of ephemeral experience. Just think of how many beautiful visitors you get through that one sense door alone, your vision. The color palette of your space, that has a well-researched impact on your mood. Reds and yellows tend to be more activating. Blues and greens can induce feelings of calm and serenity. And to the latter, they probably remind us of our ancestral habitats. That theme of our deep connection to our natural environments, that comes up a lot when we think about what makes our built spaces beautiful. Those curved, undulating lines that people find so appealing probably harkens back to naturalism as well. But the opposite is true. Just think of how dark, choppy water might make you feel, especially if you're out on a boat, or a dimly lit alleyway with lots of corners to conceal threats. Even at home, if your home ever gets messy, I know mine certainly does, just think about how that affects your mood. When I'm tripping over things or the counters get way too cluttered, I get anxious and irritable. Our brains are meaning-making machines, and beauty has its own inner logic to it. But when that logic starts to break down, then we can lose the thread and become disoriented.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
That's our mental health columnist, Mark Hennick, on CBC. Time right now is coming up to news time, and we do have developing news this morning we'll hear about in a moment. It is in Winnipeg, partly cloudy out there. If you need us in traffic, please call us, 788-3093. And coming up in business news, WestJet's introduced something called the Ultra Basic Fare. What does that mean? We'll find out. Stay tuned. But right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 15 degrees, partly cloudy right now. We do start the day with sunshine, but then as we move towards afternoon, we have a 70% chance of showers, risk of a thunderstorm, becoming windy. Today's high is 20. If you're in northern Manitoba, there is a heavy rainfall warning for Churchill and Tadouli Lake. And we do begin with that developing story just south of Winnipeg in Niverville. RCMP say there is a large police presence after police shot a person. Both Mounties and the Winnipeg Police Service are on the scene. It happened around 3 o'clock this morning. One man is dead, and police have a woman in custody. They say one other man took off in a stolen vehicle. For now, police are in the area of Drover's Run in Niverville, and they say it will be blocked off for much of today. We will bring you the latest on this story, more details as they come in throughout the morning here. But once again, a police presence in Niverville after a man was shot and killed in a police shooting. The head of Winnipeg's insect control branch says crews are working overtime to ward off an explosion of mosquitoes. 14 ground crews and 4 helicopters have been busy spraying sites with larvicide. David Wade says recent downpours have delayed their work and created more standing water. Still, Wade doesn't think mosquitoes will be a big problem for Winnipeggers, even with warmer weather on the way.
I'm confident that numbers will be at a reasonable number. I mean, there will be mosquitoes present, but they won't be at a level where it's overly bothersome to the residents of Winnipeg.
Wade says the city now relies more heavily on a long-lasting larvicide, which doesn't have to be reapplied every time it rains. And if a rainy spring is dampening your spirit, you are not alone. Soggy fields are impacting athletes, too. Many outdoor sports are dealing with slippery, swampy messes. Nigel Batchelor is with the Manitoba Organization of Disc Sports.
One of the best things about Ultimate is that you don't need very much to play. You just need cleats and a disc. But one thing we do need is a safe playing surface, and that's where the rain's really, been a challenge so far.
Batchelor says Sunday's downpour delayed the high school provincial ultimate final. Even more rain canceled tryouts last night. Dan Cox at the Winnipeg Minor Baseball Association also says safety is an issue. He says kids can fall on slippery surfaces. Winnipeg and the Red River Valley saw about double the normal precipitation in May. A court-appointed forensic psychiatrist is set to testify today about the mental state of an admitted serial killer. Another expert told the murder trial yesterday Jeremy Skibitsky was suffering from schizophrenia when he killed 4 Indigenous women in Winnipeg in 2022. That psychiatrist, who was called by the defense, told court Skibitsky felt compelled to carry out the killings because he believed he was on a mission from God. Skibitsky has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. His lawyers admit he killed the women, but argue he is not criminally responsible because of mental illness. Crown prosecutors say the killings were racially motivated, and Skibitsky targeted the vulnerable women at homeless shelters. This summer could be a record-breaking season for wildfires and one that keeps firefighters right across the province busy. In Thompson, the fire department is already dealing with fires, except their fires have been deliberately set. Thompson's fire chief, Steve Malloy, says the department has already responded to more than 20 arson calls.
What's been happening is we have person or persons going around and deliberately starting old couches, mattresses that have been put outside of various buildings, deliberately on fire. The problem with that, it puts a huge strain on an already strained resource.
The Thompson Fire Department's already down 5 full-time firefighter paramedics, and it's responding to more than 700 calls for service a month. Malloy says a campaign is underway to educate people on the dangers and consequences of arson. Well, the Bank of Canada makes its June interest rate setting this morning, and most analysts are suggesting a rate cut is very much a possibility. It would be the first in more than 4 years, and the bank's decision today will indicate whether it feels inflation is under control. The bank's influential rate is currently at 5%. That is the highest it has been since 2001. You can hear more on this story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. And you can find the latest news updated throughout the morning on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
And just to reiterate Heather's top story, we have Megan Ketchison, who's going to be heading out to Niverville. So we'll stay on top of what's happening there. Thanks to our news department, of course. 6:35 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and you're with 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. This is CBC. Let's get into our regional forecast here. Abby Adeyemi is in to talk us through the details.
Good morning once again. Still 15 degrees in Winnipeg, and we're already seeing that sunny break. We're expecting that mix of sun and clouds later with a 70% chance of showers and possible thunderstorm this afternoon. It will be breezy with a high of 20 degrees. That's the high we're looking at for today. Tonight, mainly cloudy and also chance of showers. Heading west to Brandon, it's 12 degrees at the moment and partly cloudy. Today, expect a mix of sun and clouds with a 60% chance of showers sometimes in the afternoon. It will become windy also, and you'll be seeing a high of 18. Good morning to folks in the northern part of the province. Heading north to Thompson now, it is 6 degrees. We're seeing a light rain currently, and this rain will be ending sometime this morning, and then we should be expecting cloudy skies with a chance of showers later in the day, and would see a high of 11. Further north in Churchill, it's 1 and it's foggy right now. We're seeing this drizzle that will be turning into heavy rain this morning, and then the fog patches will stay and a steady temperature of around 1 degrees. That's what we'll be seeing. We also have a rainfall warning in effect. We're expecting about 50 to 80 millimeters by Thursday evening for Churchill and regions around there. Dauphin is currently at 14 degrees and sunny. Today will be mainly cloudy with a 70% chance of showers and some breezy conditions to go with that, and the high for the day will be 17. Gimli is at 13, also seeing a sunny start already. For the Interlake region, this sunny start will become a mix of sun and clouds later, and then a 70% chance of showers would come with a risk of thunderstorm in the afternoon. Also breezy, high of 20. Steinbach is at 13 and also sunny. Today's forecast includes a mix of sun and clouds later in the day with a 70% chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorm late this morning into the afternoon period. Breezy, a high of 21. And finally, Morris is sunny already at 13 degrees. Today's forecast for the Pembina Valley region calls for a mix of sun and clouds, a 60% chance of showers, and a risk of thunderstorm this afternoon. Breezy conditions, high of 20. Once again, Winnipeg, we are at 15 degrees, partly cloudy at the moment, but we're seeing that sunny appearance already.
I'm kind of bummed out. I don't know why. I thought today was going to be the turning point for us. I mean, I know this is first world problems land, but it's like, oh. So I guess tomorrow we'll have to wait for the rain to go away for southern Manitoba. For Winnipeg.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right. We'll wait. Be patient. The commute. Corey, what's up?
Well, roads are dry so far right now, and things seem to be going pretty smoothly. Haven't heard any major issues on that CBC commuter line. But if you're walking, bike, and driving, give me a call and let me know what you're seeing out there, even if it's good. Love to hear that too. 204-788-3093.
Let's turn our attention to business news. Crystal Ramlakan joins us via Zoom with our report this morning. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning, Marcy.
So some online streaming services are going to have to pay into a fund to boost Canadian content. What are the details of it?
Well, foreign streamers will be required to contribute 5% of their Canadian revenues to support domestic broadcasting. So the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, or the CRTC, says the money will be used to boost local and Indigenous broadcasting, French language content, and content created by equity-deserving groups. So this is part of a law passed last year to make sure companies like Netflix make contributions to Canadian culture. Now, groups in the creative and media industries applaud the move, but critics are concerned Canadians will ultimately foot the bill. Here's Michael Geist, who is a law professor at the University of Ottawa. He says, we could pay through higher bills or less choice.
And so if you take away 5% of revenues and say that has to now go into this fund and you don't even benefit from any of this, it seems likely that you have to increase prices if you're going to stay in the market to ensure that you remain competitive.
Now, the CRTC says the measure will start in the 2024-2025 broadcasting year and would raise about $200 million per year. The Motion Picture Association of Canada, with members like Netflix and Disney Plus, says this is going to make it harder for streamers to collaborate directly with Canadian creatives. Now, we're not the first country to do this, though. France also introduced similar rules in 2021, requiring streamers to allocate 20 to 25% of revenues to European and French content creation.
Let's talk about the airline industry now. WestJet's introduced something new. It's called the Ultra basic fare. What now? What more could we be stripping down?
I know. Okay, so this fare is not going to include a carry-on bag.
Okay.
You don't get to choose your seat. And you won't even earn WestJet rewards points on the flight.
Just get on the plane.
Yeah, exactly. So you will get a carry-on if you're traveling on a transatlantic or trans-Pacific flight, though. Or you can pay more for the airline's extended comfort option. And you can check a bag in advance for a fee and bring a personal item that fits under the seat. But if you arrive at the gate with a carry-on bag, you'll be hit with both the checked bag fee and an additional service fee. So you're going to be assigned your seat at the back of the plane, and you have to board last with no guarantee that you can sit with who you're traveling with. Of course, you can pay a fee to choose your seat. And there are no changes, cancellations, or refunds on your flight. So you better make sure you want to get on that flight. And this ultra basic fare will replace the airline's basic fare option. Here's John Lawford, who is the executive director of the Public Interest Advocacy Center in Ottawa.
That they're doing it to discipline their travelers. You're having to put up with obvious changes in the quality of the travel experience to save a few dollars. They're asserting some control over your experience and being quite deliberate about it to try to create this tiering inside the aircraft. Having more segmentation in the same aircraft in place of running like a low-cost carrier.
Now, WestJet says the changes will help speed up boarding, optimize cabin space, and improve the travel experience.
Super interesting. And before we look at the numbers this morning, why is Pepsi falling behind in popularity?
Well, Dr. Pepper just passed Pepsi as the second biggest soda brand in the U.S. Coke, of course, is still at the top, and that's according to market share data from trade publication Beverage Digest. So last year, Coke captured about 20% of the market. Dr. Pepper and Pepsi had just over 8%. Now, Dr. Pepper has been gaining and Pepsi has been declining, so they're kind of meeting in the middle here. Over the years, the peppery soda with its blend of 23 flavors, it claims, has been growing in popularity. It's been leaning into its identity as a spicy alternative to cola and taking advantage of broader trends. So I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but Dr. Pepper actually came before Coca-Cola and Pepsi. It was founded in 1885 in Texas. And while the two cola giants battled it out in the 20th century, Dr. Pepper established a small but devoted following in the American South. In the 1970s, Dr. Pepper started marketing itself as a national, brand and to a national audience as a unique flavor. And today the company is experimenting with new flavors like strawberries and cream and creamy coconut, inspired by TikTok's dirty soda trend. So that's mixing soda with milk or cream. Now, spicy or sweet and spicy items are trending. Even Coke introduced Coca-Cola Spiced, a rare permanent addition to its lineup. Pepsi, on the other hand, may be too focused on its other brands. PepsiCo has a massive food and beverage business, including Quaker and Frito-Lay.
It's interesting. Hey, I don't think I realized Dr. Pepper was older than the other colas. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can sing their theme song. Wouldn't you like to be
what
a
is
pepper?
it?
Don't you know it? I'm a pepper, you're a pepper, he's a pepper, she's a pepper. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too? There.
That I had no idea. I had no
Really?
idea that was a song. No,
Oh,
yeah.
look it up. It'll be stuck in your head the rest of the day. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, what's happening in the market so far this morning?
In Europe, stocks are higher as investors look ahead to the next meeting of the European Central Bank. And of course, the Bank of Canada also making its interest rate decision this morning. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down right now. Oil is up 16 cents to $73.41 US per barrel. Gold is up $5.85 to $2,332.86 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.05 of a cent to 73.07 cents US.
All right. Thanks a lot, Krista Lee, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Krista Lee Ramlicam with our business news. Used to have a producer that could sing every theme song for every product, and she'd wander around the newsroom, and you just hear her with every lyric. It is partly cloudy right now. It's 15 degrees in the city of Winnipeg. Today, our high is going to be 20. Not done with the showers yet. Nice morning out there, bright, beautiful. However, this afternoon, we have a 70% chance we're going to see showers actually late this morning and into the afternoon, and a risk of a thunderstorm. So a high of 20. Going to be windy too, winds west 40, gusting to 60. Well, stay with us here on CBC. We have developing and breaking news this morning. We have a reporter on her way to Niverville right now because there's a developing story just south of Winnipeg in Niverville. RCMP say there's a large police presence. Police have shot a person there, and one man is dead. Police have a woman in custody. So we will hear more details from Heather Wells throughout the morning, and she's in with next headlines before the top of the clock. Now, right now, it is 6:46 a.m., and you're on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or on YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you for joining us here on the show this morning. It is time for our medical column today, and we're talking about breast cancer screening guidelines. They've been in the news a lot lately. In Manitoba, the PC party has been pushing the NDP government to lower the age for self-referral breast cancer screening to 40. Right now, it's at 50. Last week on the show, we talked to Shannon Coates about this. She was diagnosed with the most aggressive form of breast cancer at the age of 42.
It was quite frustrating having a very intense background of my family, having breast cancer and being denied year after year, being denied the mammograms. It's unfortunate that here in Manitoba, women aged 40 to 49 in Manitoba can't self-refer for the screening of a mammogram. I would love this to happen immediate. I don't know why there's such pushback. Only Manitoba and Quebec are the only provinces who are denying this as we speak.
So that's Shannon Coates, and we were speaking last week here. She's a Winnipegger diagnosed with the most aggressive form of breast cancer at the age of 42. Well, as I alluded to, these conversations are happening across the country. Specifically, the Canadian Task Force on Preventative Health Care has been under some scrutiny for updates to its recommendations about when to start screening. So the focus is what age should we recommend routine mammograms for women like Shannon who are at average risk of developing the disease, that would be like average risk, versus those who are at higher risk like Shannon. So what should the screening age be? That was the topic of a recent conversation I had on our medical column with Dr. Raj Bhardwaj.
Good morning.
So why don't we just take a step back for those who have missed this conversation initially and catch us up on the breast cancer screening news?
Yeah, so the Canadian Task Force on Preventative Healthcare released their draft recommendations to update their guidelines for breast cancer screening programs. And they basically said that people should be able to get a mammogram starting at age 40, but it shouldn't be routinely offered to women under 50 if they are at average risk for developing breast cancer. So that's caused some confusion and controversy, even some anger amongst doctors and patient advocates and patients themselves. And, you know, a bunch of provinces have already lowered the age of routine screening to 40. The equivalent task force in the US has as well. In Europe, the guidelines basically recommend no screening from age 40 to 44, but there's a moderate strength guideline in Europe to screen from age 45 to 49, and then it goes into a strong guideline to screen people from age 50 up. So, you know, we're sort of all over the place when it comes to the actual age.
And I know that our health minister has said that they are considering lowering the age of screening, but they need to address capacity issues. Why can't different provinces or different expert groups agree on the guidelines, Dr. Bhardwaj?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to think about. So, I think that everyone in all these groups agrees that, look, finding treatable cancer sooner before they become symptomatic or noticeable in any way other than by mammogram is a good thing to strive for. Because the sooner we find a breast cancer and the smaller it is, the greater the chance of curing it and surviving it. But the difficult question is then, who do we screen? Which people of average risk do we invite to come for a mammogram every 2 years, even though they're apparently fully healthy and well with no signs of breast cancer? So if we had a test that could catch all cancers and also not overcall other spots that end up not being cancer, it would be easy. But we don't have a test like that. So let me just go through some ballpark numbers so that people can understand it a bit. So for every 1,000 screening mammograms we do, completely healthy people, no symptoms, 1,000 screening mammograms, we end up calling back about 100 people saying basically, hey, we saw something on your mammogram, maybe cancer, we need to do more tests. So when we complete those tests, ultrasounds, MRI scans, surgical biopsies, surgery sometimes, things like that, we will have found about 5 real cancers. So that means that of the 100 people we called back, 95 of those people never had cancer. So we say to them, sorry for all the hassle, see you again in 2 years. I mean, and I say hassle, of course, it's so much more than that, right? On an individual level, there's worry about cancer, there's surgical procedures, there's surgical complications, there's things like that. On a system level, there's a big increase in the number of mammograms and follow-ups and surgeries, etc., needed to be done if we lower the screening age. And that means that people who actually have cancer might have to wait longer for their tests and follow-ups and stuff to find out that, actually, that was cancer, right? So another thing that the task force has to take into account is that breast cancer is more common as you age. So it's less common in the 40 to 49-year-olds compared to people 50 and over. So there's less cancer to find in that younger age group. So the proportion of mammograms that trigger further testing but end up being not cancer, that proportion is even higher in the younger age group. So you see where this controversy is starting to come from, right? When is it okay to basically subject people to all the worry and waiting and additional testing and pain and increased pressure on the healthcare system versus the fact that there will be some cancers that aren't detected as early if we don't offer people the chance to have a mammogram at age 40? And that's the tough part, that balance between those two sort of things, that's the tough part.
Can I ask you, are there more false positives in a younger age demographic, or is there not data to support that?
No, yeah. So if you have a lower risk of having cancer, right, and then we do a screening test on you, we're going to find more false positives because there are fewer true positives to find.
Why do some provinces already offer mammograms to women starting at age 40 then, given what you've been outlining?
Well, because age 40 or age 50 is not a magical age where suddenly your risk of breast cancer jumps. It's a continuum. Even people in their 20s can develop breast cancer. It's just way more rare, right? Since age is the biggest risk factor for developing breast cancer. But here's the rub. The risk of developing breast cancer at a younger age has been increasing for a few decades. So now we're looking at this and we're saying, well, gosh, we should try to compensate for that increasing risk by maybe changing our guidelines to include people at a younger age, right? But when we lower that age, if we lower it from 50 to 40, for example, that's a lot of extra people that get the added worry and the added healthcare involvement and the added testing and maybe scars and stuff like that to find a relatively small number of cancers overall. So some groups have said, well, that's worth it to save more lives. And others have said, well, maybe we should let a woman in that gray zone decide for themselves, but not prescribe the test to them as part of a routine guideline, right? So, I mean, in a perfect world, I think it would be great if you could go talk to your doctor about this and have a long conversation about your personal risks and would you want surgery and things like that. But we're not living in a perfect world. A lot of people don't have family docs.
Why is the risk of cancer increasing in younger people, as you said?
Yeah, so we don't have a great answer to that. There's all sorts of potential reasons. It could be just that things are changing through the decades. Alcohol intake can make a big difference. Differences in diet, differences in your weight overall, earlier onset of puberty. Maybe it's more plastics and chemicals in our world in general. We really don't know. Why it seems to be that cancer is trending younger over time. But we do know that some people are just at higher risk overall. So if you have a family history of breast cancer, if you come from Western or Central African descent, that increases the risk of more aggressive cancer. Cancer also tends to show up earlier for Asian and Hispanic and Indigenous people too, often in their 40s. Also having dense breast tissue, that all of these things can increase your risk of having breast cancer. But remember that these breast cancer guidelines that are being debated are meant to be applied to people of average risk only. And another important point, these are guidelines for screening, which is testing someone before they have any symptoms at all. So if you have a breast lump that you find, then you're not going for a screening mammogram, you're going for a diagnostic mammogram and probably ultrasound. So if you find a lump, no matter what your age, you're concerned about it, that should be investigated. Go talk to a doctor about it. They need to send you for some tests and stuff, depending on some other things. But that's not the same as screening.
Just before you go this morning, you alluded to this. We're living in a time where a lot of people do not have family docs. So if you don't have that doctor to talk about screening, where would you suggest that discussion has, or what's your advice?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really tough. I mean, there are health advice lines that they can, maybe get you hooked up with the doctor, at least in the short term or something like that. But one of the benefits of decreasing the screening age officially would be that then if you fit the screening criteria, in some provinces, they've actually set it up so you can self-refer for a screening mammogram. So that's another added benefit of lowering the age. So, I mean, it's a quite a journey to go through, though. If you have a mammogram and you end up being called saying, "Oh, well, we found something. We don't know if it's cancer or not, but we found something." That's a huge journey. And again, I would want a family doctor at my side if I had something like that. But that's not going to change anytime soon unless we throw a lot of resources at it. But with regards to screening programs, I mean, there's never going to be 100% correct answer as to the screening age or something like that. There's only sort of best answers for right now. So, I think that we're going to see as the population changes, as disease evidence changes, as technology changes, we're going to see these guidelines change as well. At least we should see these guidelines change as well.
All right, Dr. Bardwaj, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
That's our medical column and Dr. Raj Bardwaj. Heard every Wednesday morning, by the way, here on Information Radio. Thanks for being with us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. We're going to get into our forecast in a moment, but we have serious developing news this morning in Manitoba. And with your headlines, here's Heather Wells.
Yes, we are working to get you more details on what we do know is a large police presence in Niverville, just south of Winnipeg. One man is dead after being shot by a police officer. It happened around 3 this morning. RCMP and Winnipeg police are on the scene in Niverville. A woman's in custody and a man took off in a stolen vehicle. Now, police are telling us the area of Drover's Run in Niverville is going to be blocked off for a large portion of the day. So as we learn more, we will pass those details on to you. Some firefighters in Thompson are working 24-hour shifts to cover vacancies in that city's fire department. Fully staffed, Thompson's department would be at 24 full-time firefighter paramedics, but right now there are 5 positions unstaffed. So we'll hear more about that as well, coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the weather warning today. There's a rainfall warning for North, Churchill and Tuduli Lake specifically. 50 to 80 millimeters possible starting throughout today, tonight, and then into tomorrow night. Here in Winnipeg and for southern Manitoba, we're pretty similar to Brandon, for example, but Winnipeg sunny this morning. You can see that. Really nice start to the day, but a high of 20 today. It's going to get windy and gusty this afternoon, and a 70% chance we're going to see more showers here. On your morning commute, please let us know if you have any problems, 788-3093. In the next hour of the program, many Canadians and polls are saying Pierre Poilievre is likely to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. There's a new biography that looks at the Conservative Party leader. We're going to talk to the author. In addition, young people with intellectual disabilities will have a chance to pitch themselves to employers today at a reverse job fair, it's being called. We're going to hear from a young man who's hoping to land himself a job, so stay tuned for that conversation. And then speaking of young people, it's a safe space for teens in Winnipeg's inner city to hang out after school. Now Rossbrook House says it plans to keep their drop-in center open all summer, but they need some financial help to do it. We're going to talk to them about the need in that part of Winnipeg and also what programs they're running to meet the needs of youth in our community. Stay with us. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at the show on Information Radio. And up next on CBC World Report, the latest in national and international news.
Today on The Current.
One burn, one sky, one beer.
A pub crawl without the booze, a wedding with champagne-free toasts. A growing number of young people are doing their socializing without alcohol, with 25% of Canadians choosing not to drink. A look at sober, curious fun coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The Bank of Canada will make its latest interest rate announcement later this morning. It has held it at 5% for almost a year now. But the bank is seeing some progress in its efforts to rein in inflation. And many economists think we could see a cut in the key overnight lending rate. CBC's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
It's been a rough couple of years. Canadian households have been clobbered by a double whammy of rising prices and increased borrowing costs. Many, especially those with a variable rate mortgage, have been waiting for some kind of sign that the Bank of Canada is ready to cut rates. At its last meeting, Bank Governor Tiff Macklem would only say this.
As we consider how much longer to hold the policy rate at the current level, we're looking for evidence that the recent further easing in underlying inflation will be sustained.
Since then, inflation data came in better than expected. The core measures the bank is focused on are working their way back to target. GDP has remained flat but avoided dipping into an outright recession.
The Bank of Canada has the green light to cut rates right now.
That's Frances Donald, chief economist at Manulife Investment. She says there's still a chance the bank waits until next month to be sure inflationary pressures really are coming to heel. But Donald says the bigger question is how much and how quickly the bank will reduce rates once it starts.
We think they might have to cut rates as much as 8 times in the next 2 years. That's a really different story than do they start now or in 6 weeks.
So this morning's release should provide more than just today's rate. Watch for details about how the bank thinks the next few quarters are going to look. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
National caucuses are meeting on Parliament Hill this morning. The atmosphere is still tense after the release earlier this week of a parliamentary committee report. It suggests some of their peers may be willing participants in efforts by foreign governments to interfere in Canadian politics. Janice McGregor has been closely following this story. And Janice, now that this information is out there, what are the parties doing about it?
Someone who might be sharing confidential information with foreign diplomats or intelligence officers, rising to speak not for their constituents, but for a hostile government's interests. These are serious concerns. And when reporters pushed this issue with Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland yesterday, she suggested the Liberals were doing some kind of internal follow-up on the information in this report. But what does that mean? What would this internal review that Freeland was floating look like? I asked Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc.
That would be a good question to ask her. I know that our government is always reviewing the security measures that are in place to detect and disrupt foreign interference.
After that scrum, I kept asking who would do this internal work. Would it be a transparent process? Would constituents be told if this was their MP? And all I got back was that the minister's comments stand. Freeland herself said enforcement actions can't be politicized, particularly in this case, where we're not even sure not only which MPs, but even from which party this report is calling out. The NDP, the Bloc, raised this issue in question period yesterday, but Conservatives remarkably silent on foreign interference.
So if this is something best left to independent enforcement agencies, what do we know about what action the RCMP is taking, for example?
Very, very little. In fact, that's another confusing thing about this report, because in early April at the public inquiry, the RCMP revealed that it was investigating some kind of foreign interference activity arising from the 2021 election. But then in Monday's report, we can read the RCMP conducted no investigations in the context of the 2019 or 2021 elections. And remember, the unredacted version of this report went to the minister back in March. So, which is it? I put that question to the RCMP late on Monday, seeking clarification. It's Wednesday now, and I'm still waiting for an answer.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
That is the CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. An Ontario court is hearing explosive testimony this week about a Toronto area murder allegedly linked to ISIS. One man was killed and several other people were shot at a Mississauga takeout restaurant in 2021. The Crown star witness is now laying out what he says the accused told him about the attack. CBC's Thomas Daigle is following the case.
Give them a 2-week notice, and you just don't want to show up to work like now.
The jury heard recordings of heated conversations, highlighting the falling out between one of the alleged killers and the slain victim, Naeem Akil.
This guy's f***ing stupid, bro. He thinks I'm going to give him more money. I told him, read that message.
The Crown says there was more to that disagreement than just money. Prosecutors allege the 3 men charged with first-degree murder had all pledged allegiance to ISIS and that they targeted Akil because he learned of the connection and was planning to tell authorities. The jury has now heard from a former friend of the alleged killers. Mikhail Aris testified that after the attack, the accused asked him to swear an oath in the name of the ISIS leader. The witness said the alleged gunman, Anand Nath, recounted how he walked into the Chickenland restaurant that evening 3 years ago and opened fire at everyone inside, including Akil's parents and brother.
All the Crown has to prove is that the offense was planned and deliberate.
Criminal defense lawyer Chris Sorotin is not involved in the case. He says prosecutors don't need to prove any connection to ISIS for a murder conviction, but it could ensure a longer sentence on the charges of attempted murder.
If there's evidence that any offense was committed as part of a terrorist activity, then that's an aggravating factor.
Lawyers for the accused have not yet laid out their defense. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Brampton, Ontario.
A normal rush hour in New Delhi, India, but people woke up to the news that the governing BJP has won significantly fewer seats than expected. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will still form a government, but without his expected majority. It seems like Modi got a shock, says this man. His party workers were overconfident. The public wanted to see change, says this voter, because of inflation and unemployment. Modi's BJP ended up with 240 seats, just short of the halfway mark in the 543-member lower house. In France. Ceremonies have begun in Normandy for the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. And tomorrow, CBC will have special coverage. In preparation, my World Report co-host John Northcott has been talking to some of those surviving veterans. And John, still to be able to hear firsthand from Canadians who fought is remarkable. What did you learn?
Marcia, the youngest veterans of D-Day are in their late 90s. I got a chance to speak to several who shared their stories of the day. Jim Parks was there. The waters of the English Channel were rough, the tide was rising, and the 19-year-old Parks with the Royal Winnipeg Rifles was on board a landing craft. I asked him what his memories were of that day.
And it's a pretty rough water, and it was very noisy. We managed to get in, but there's quite a lot of opening fire coming from left to right. The prevailing wind was from the right. The water got rougher as they got closer to shore.
Parks had his landing craft sink. He and his comrades lost all their weapons and gear. They were sick from swallowing so much seawater, but he made it to the beach, being strafed with machine gun fire from 2 directions. He had to think fast.
So we ended up in the on the beach with no equipment. And when I got to the little further inland, there's one of the soldiers from one of the rifle companies. He'd been hit, so I picked up his Sten gun and some of his ammo and I carried on from there.
The veterans you talked to, what did they tell you about what they will think about today?
Marcia, they talked about the nervousness of that day. Some described it as excitement about being able to contribute to the victory. But then they talked about their fallen comrades, young men, boys really, who haven't been around for the last 80 years, haven't been around to marry, raise families, and live in the country that they helped keep free.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Marcia.
My World Report co-host, John Northcott. John, along with Nella Ayed in France, will host tomorrow's special coverage here on CBC Radio 1. It begins at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, or you can watch coverage of the ceremony live beginning at 4 a.m. Eastern on CBC News Network, CBC Gem, Explore, or on YouTube. We will leave you with more sounds from today's ceremony at the Canadian Cemetery at Bény-sur-Mer. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app or on YouTube. A bright sky, but don't be fooled. We have a chance of rain again. Abby will be in to tell us about that in a moment. We also have developing and breaking news in a rural Manitoba town in the southeast this morning. Heather, in a moment, will update us on what we know about what's happening in Niverville. Also, want to mention what's coming up this hour. We're going to talk to the author of a new biography all about Pierre Poilievre. Many Canadians and many polls are saying that he is likely to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. We'll hear all about this biography. In addition, young people with intellectual disabilities are going to have a chance to pitch themselves to employers today at a reverse job fair, is what it's being called. We'll hear more about the event and from a young man who's hoping to land himself a job. And then at 10 to 8, we'll hear more about Rossbrook House. They want to stay open 24/7 all summer long. We'll hear about what their hopes are and what they need to make that happen. But first, as I mentioned, we do have developing news this morning in Manitoba. Heather Wells has the details.
Good morning. Yes, one man is dead in Niverville after being shot by police. It happened early this morning around 3. Winnipeg police and RCMP are on the scene there. A woman is in custody. Another man took off in a stolen vehicle. Police say the area of Drover's Run will be blocked off for much of the day, and we will bring you those latest details as we get them. We are working to find out more. And RCMP, in fact, say they will release more details as this situation in Niverville continues to develop. Crews in Winnipeg are working overtime to prevent mosquitoes from hatching. 14 ground crews and 4 helicopters have been busy spraying sites with larvicide. Winnipeg's insect control says recent downpours have delayed their work and they have created more standing water. So we'll hear more about that as well coming up at 7:30.
And where you do see them already, they are big and fat.
Really?
Yeah, last night on my deck, I saw some big mosquitoes.
Oh, no.
I know. But I put in a bird bath, so I mean, that's standing water. I think I got it. Sorry, birds.
They say if you put a little bit of dish soap in your standing water, the birds probably wouldn't like it, although it might be good for a bath. But it apparently stops the mosquitoes from hatching.
Oh, maybe I'll find something that'll work for both. That would make me happy because I love me my birds. They're going to be singing in the sunshine this morning before they get wet later. Let's get into our forecast with Abby Adiemi.
14 degrees in the city, sunny here. We're kicking off with these sunny skies we're seeing this morning. Now, as the day progresses, we should be expecting to transition into a mix of sun and clouds, and we're going to be seeing about 70% chance of showers late this morning into the afternoon period, and there's also a risk of thunderstorm during this period. It will be breezy, so brace for that. We will be getting to a high of 20 today. Now, as we look ahead to tonight, mainly cloudy skies will be in the forecast with a chance of showers in the evening. Expect the evening to drop to about 10 degrees tonight. We have a rainfall warning for northern Manitoba. We have this rainfall warning for Tudor Lake and Churchill. Heavy rain amounts to about 50. We're expecting 50 to 80 millimeters by Thursday evening, which will taper to showers by Thursday night. So be advised of localized flooding in low-lying areas, and residents should be cautious near rivers, creeks, as there's a risk of washouts in those areas. But in Winnipeg, it's 14. We're starting sunny, and then there's going to be a transition to a mix of sun and clouds, possible showers, risk of thunderstorm, and then we're going to touch 20. It's a mix today.
Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's have a quick look at our commute with Corey.
Yeah, really quiet commute so far today. But if you are out there, if you're walking, bike, and driving, you see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, the next federal election is still over a year away, but as I mentioned, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is positioning himself to Canadians as the next Prime Minister. Recent polls have his party maintaining a sizable lead over the governing Liberals. Now there's a new book out, and it details Poilievre's life and political career. It explores the almost 2 decades that Poilievre spent as an MP before becoming Conservative leader. Andrew Lawton is the author of Pierre Poilievre, A Political Life, and he joins us this morning to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. So I know that this book starts with a look at his childhood in Alberta, his interest in politics from a young age. You, just to set it up, you've talked to him a few times, though not for the book. But in your researching and writing, was there anything that, has surprised you about him?
Yeah, to be honest, and I'm sure you've covered this as well, I know Canadians have seen the ever-present political flip-flop, the politicians that say one thing in one room and in another room it's different, or I think in some cases I've even seen them like flip on their own positions in the span of a press conference. But what stood out about Poilievre was how consistent he's been for not even just his political career, but even going back to when he was writing letters to the editor as a teenager, and he wrote an essay in university about what he would do as prime minister. And the message in that was almost identical to the message he shares now as conservative leader, the emphasis on the idea of freedom, the emphasis on fiscal conservatism, on government restraint, and the importance of easing regulations and all of that. It's really been unchanged for as long as he's been talking about politics.
People will know, if they're as old as I am, that he held key positions in the Harper government. For some Canadians, though, he is considered a fresh alternative voice. What does Pierre Poilievre's time in Ottawa tell us about how he might be should he be elected Prime Minister?
So the fact that he's been reelected as many times as he has in a riding that wasn't always a guaranteed conservative stronghold is, I think, pretty illuminating there. So he almost lost his seat, just for a bit of context, in 2015 when Stephen Harper and the Conservatives had a majority. They were replaced by a Liberal majority, and Poilievre was the only Conservative in the Ottawa area to keep his seat. He held on to it by, I think it was less than 2,000 votes. And a big part of that, people around him shared with me for the book, was that he was putting in the time, putting in the effort to build up his name in the community and to serve the constituents that he was representing. And by doing this, he was keeping his finger on the pulse of what they wanted. And I think we see him doing the same thing nationally. It's no secret that the issues he's talking about and hammering on almost every day are cost of living, affordability, housing, all of these things that really align with where Canadians are. And I think a lot of that is really coming from what he was doing at the local level in his riding over the last 20 years.
Obviously, in your book, you're looking personally also at the character of the man, you know, what happens behind closed doors as well. I understand you were looking at how he interacts with people and also how he is to work for. What did you learn there?
Yeah, I think there's been a bit of an evolution on this, because when he was first appointed to cabinet, there were a number of people that I spoke to that said he was just so demanding to work with, very, very difficult. Like, he had these just expectations that they would move mountains, and when they did it, there was no gold star, there was no congratulations. It was, yeah, that was what you were supposed to do. And I think it's softened a little bit. I think he's taken the HR mentality that perhaps was lacking earlier on, people have said, and he started to realize it's a bit more important than he was then. Some of the people that worked for him in cabinet had recounted that he had told his staff on at least a few occasions, this is not a self-esteem factory, as if to say, you know, your feelings don't matter here, we have a job to do. And they decided to cope with that by printing it out and putting it up on a poster in the office. I don't know if I'd call it a motivational poster, but, you know, putting it up on the office wall just to, you know, at least have a laugh at it.
Why didn't he run for Conservative Party leader in 2020?
You know, I think one thing that's governed him in the course of his political career is a sense of good timing. And I think there was a part of him that just felt it wasn't necessarily the right timing. But the big thing, which I share in the book that had never really been discussed elsewhere, was that it was at that time in 2020 that he and his wife were just starting to realize the extent of their daughter's autism diagnosis. She is nonverbal. She's had some success in recent years in therapy, but at the time, I think there were still a lot of question marks about what that would look like for the family. And I've gotten the sense from people around him that was really weighing on him at that moment and feeling, you know, maybe this isn't the time to plunge my family into this big challenge, in a way that, you know, a year and a half later, evidently he felt a bit more on solid footing.
He is often criticized by Liberals, but every party criticizes everyone. But he's also criticized by others for having social conservative views. He gets, even though he has said he would uphold same-sex marriage if elected Prime Minister, and he has openly disagreed with a member of his caucus who wanted more limits on abortion rights. Having said that, how should people through your work and understanding the man, how do you think they should view Pierre Poilievre in terms of social conservatism?
So I talk about that a fair bit in the book because it is a question that people are going to ask. And the fact of the matter is he just isn't a social conservative. It's just not part of what he has been through his political career, and it isn't part of his pitch to voters now. I think that, this week it certainly ratified that. It's not even like in the case of Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole, where there was a bit of ambiguity on how they were going to deal with that and, how they were going to navigate that section of their party. I think in his case, he's been clear. He doesn't want, he's not going to go near it, but he doesn't want his caucus to either.
What do you hope people take away from your book?
It's just about an understanding of who he is and what he's about as a politician. I mean, I wrote this in part because of my own curiosity, too, and in wanting to figure out who this guy is that might be prime minister. And it's not a promotional piece. It's not an exceedingly critical piece. It's really focused on just the facts. So I hope people come away with a bit more of an understanding of who he is.
Andrew, thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
That's Andrew Lawton, managing editor of True North Media, and former host on Global News Radio as well. But we're talking to him this morning about his book. It is called Pierre Poilievre, A Political Life.
I'm Janet Stewart. The head of Winnipeg's largest school division says it's time to develop a cohesive cell phone policy for all of its schools. What do you think of cell phone usage in schools? Should they be restricted during learning times or banned outright? Join our call-in conversation Wednesday on Radio Noon. Weigh in now at 204-788-3797.
7:22 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC 89.3. Thanks for being with us on the app or on YouTube as well. Man, if you are on YouTube, you're seeing just a beautiful shot of the sky right now with the sun coming up. It's not going to stay that way for the day, so don't forget your umbrella. Again, we have a 70% chance of showers and a high of 20, and it's going to be windy later. Still ahead on the program this morning, there's something called a reverse job fair going on in Winnipeg. It is all about aiming the information at people who are young people living with intellectual disabilities, and they will get actually a chance to pitch themselves to employers at this event. So we're going to hear more about that. We're also going to hear from a young man who is hoping to land himself a job. So that's all coming up at 7:40. Stay tuned for the interview. Well, you know what else is coming up? The Jazz Fest. I can't believe we're at this time of year already, but it starts June 14th. That's the end of next week. We have a bit of music from a Métis pop artist, Quiet, who's part of the lineup for this year's Winnipeg International Jazz Fest. This tune's called Follow the Call.
Do you hear it? Started like a hum, heard it when you were young, sounded like thunder on the horizon. What could you do? You knew what you wanted and it wanted you. It's time, the fever's here and rising. Fear it, you have what you need. Run wild and finally be free. Watch the world around you unravel. Take a leap of faith. You only move forward once the toll's been paid. And it's time to mark the path you'll travel.
Quiet and Follow the Call, part of the Winnipeg International Jazz Fest that begins June 14th, and Quiet's actually playing on that evening, 7:30, if you want to check out the show at Little Brown Jug Patio. Abby and I think that kind of sounded like it could be the soundtrack to a Bond movie or something, that build I could see that, right? Under some credits. Scott Regera, I don't know how much of the music you heard. Sound like a
Very
Bond?
Bond-esque.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet like
Bill.
Adele, I could see, not quite
Yeah.
Adele, but a little bit of that
It's
vibe.
got the vibes. Yeah, it's got the vibes. All right, let's talk sports vibes. Mostly encouraging signs from Canada's women's soccer team as it gets set to defend its Olympic gold medal, would you say?
Yeah, I would. They would have liked, of course, to finish their summer send-off series with a win last night in Toronto, Marcy, but a draw against an improved Mexican side where Canada really dominated possession throughout. That's not a bad performance. Kadisha Buchanan, she scored Canada's lone goal last night on a header, looping header early in the second half. The imposing defender whose day job is with the English club Chelsea. One of the few stars, Marcy, that Coach Bev Priestman elected to start. Others like goalie Kaylin Sheridan, defender Vanessa Gilles, striker Adriana Leon, Desiree Scott from Winnipeg. They were all dropped to the bench and then made appearances later on. So Canada, despite all of this, is on a 12-game unbeaten streak, which ties the record set a few years ago during that Tokyo gold medal run. Here's Priestman.
I wish we could have got a win to send us off, but I think for us, we set that record in 2021, and we know, in 2021 we had a great year. Every player, every staff member, it's been a massive push off the back of a World Cup. We've been a together team in difficult circumstances, and I just can't wait to kick off on July 25th with whatever squad ends up going.
All right, so last night was Canada's final match before Priestman names her squad for the Olympics. Is Desiree Scott part of this team? 18 spots and 4 alternate spots. Desiree, she's had her share of injuries. She's 37 now, and there's a lot of young talent looking to burst through. All of that said, the experience she obviously brings, she was part of 2 bronze medal and 1 gold medal winning team, would be vital, especially in the absence of Christine Sinclair, Sophie Schmidt, and others. I'm sure some are listening going, well, it's a fait accompli. I mean, Desiree Scott's got to be part of this team.
Tough question, and obviously local bias. But when you talk about her experience and then those that have left, I mean, you can see what she would bring to this team.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus the quality, which is, she maybe not for a full 90 minutes, but as she came in the second half yesterday, that's great stuff too, on maybe a more limited basis than in the past.
Let's go to another story. A notable performance yesterday by a Canadian looking to qualify for Paris on his bike.
Yeah, Ottawa's Derek G. Marcy won the 3rd stage of the Critérium du Dauphiné. That is a race in the French Alps, considered among the most prestigious in the sport outside of the Grand Tours. At last year's Giro d'Italia, Marcy, Derek G. finished second on 4 different stages. So he was a bit shocked yesterday to finally secure his first World Cup Tour win.
This is by far the biggest thing that I've done in my career, and I'm just going to take this for what it is, a massive win, and I can't express how happy I am. Did I have confidence I could do that? Not really, but you got to give it a crack even if you don't think you can make it, and I paid off today. Honestly, I was having flashbacks as I was going towards the line, waiting for just one guy to come around me, but no, I'm so happy to be able to finally get a win in Europe.
G's triumph comes just a couple of months after crashing in a race where he fractured his collarbone and suffered a concussion as well. So what a turnaround for Derek G. as he sets his sights on making Canada's Olympic team. The cycling squad hasn't been selected yet, but there are 2 spots available in the road race, another in the time trial, and the way G's performing right now, he'd be a prime candidate for both.
And closer to home, just 3 more sleeps for fans of the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, and those fans can buy tickets starting this morning, Marcy, for their home games in the Stanley Cup Final. Some are already available on resale sites, and if you want a decent seat between the blue lines, it'll cost you $4,000.
Wow.
In the nosebleeds, a comparative steal at $1,400. At those prices, Edmontonians might want to consider hopping on a flight to Miami, where seats are running for about half as much.
Or buying a better coach.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Good point. Picking a favorite in this series, a toss-up. The Oilers probably have a little more talent with Connor McDavid and company. The Panthers more experience. They made the Stanley Cup Final just last year, after all. Edmonton coach Chris Knobloch was asked about that.
Yeah, experience is good. I don't know how much experience is, beneficial. You can ask the Buffalo Bills how important Super Bowl experience is. I think the biggest thing is just having confidence to play. And, when our guys are playing their best, they should have a lot of confidence.
First of all, poor Buffalo Bills. They always get referenced at times like this, right? The team that went to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row and lost. But I want to mention the Oilers do have a handful of players who've been to a Stanley Cup final, including Corey Perry, who incredibly enough is with his 5th Stanley Cup final team, different Stanley Cup final team. He hasn't won since he was with Anaheim in his rookie year 18 years ago, and he's been chasing another cup since.
Keeps trying.
Yeah, keeps trying.
All right, thanks a lot, Scott.
You betcha.
Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Quick traffic note here. Kirsty called McGillivray at Kenniston. You lose one turning lane to construction. Apparently it's causing big backups right now. So take note of that. 788-3093 or CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is partly cloudy, 14 degrees right now. We're headed to a high of 20. We are expecting showers today. There's a 70% chance of showers, maybe even a thunderstorm, windy as well. One man is dead this morning after being shot by police in Niverville. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is heading to that town just southeast of Winnipeg and joins us with what we do know. Megan?
Well, what we know so far is that there's a heavy police presence around the Shell in Niverville that is at Highway 311, near Highway 311 and Cron Road. It's actually on a side road called Drover's Run. This started about 3 this morning when police were in Niverville were involved in an officer shooting. A man is deceased there on the scene. Winnipeg police are also in the area and are expected to be in the area for most of the day. From people that I've spoken to in Niverville, they say that they're not used to seeing this kind of police presence, but there's a large number of vehicles of both RCMP and Winnipeg police there at the Shell. I'm also told that there is another area where there are police on Highway 59 near the town. Now, from what police tell us, that one female is in custody and another man left the scene in a stolen vehicle, and more details will be released later on today. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thank you so much, Megan. On her way to Niverville, we will bring you those details as we get them. Crews in Winnipeg are working overtime to prevent mosquitoes from hatching. 14 ground crews and 4 helicopters have been busy spraying sites with larvicide. David Wade is superintendent at Insect Control. He says recent downpours have delayed their work and created more standing water. But Wade is confident mosquitoes won't be a big problem for Winnipeggers, even with warmer weather on the way.
It's good on one hand because it does dry up the water, but on the other hand, it does speed up the development of the mosquitoes as well. But we got enough time right now to get to all the sites from this week's rain.
Wade says the city now relies more heavily on a long-lasting larvicide, which doesn't have to be reapplied every time it rains. And if you feel like it's rained a lot, you're right. Winnipeg and the Red River Valley had about double the normal precipitation in May, and June is off to a soggy start. It has dampened the spirits of athletes. Many outdoor sports have been dealing with slippery, swampy fields. Dan Cox chairs the Winnipeg Minor Baseball Association.
You cannot play on it right now. You'll sink into the ground, and it's a safety issue too, right? You can't. Your kids will get hurt. They'll slip and fall.
Nigel Batchelor at the Manitoba Organization of Disc Sports says one of the key components of Ultimate is a safe playing surface, and this week's rain has created a challenge. Batchelor says Sunday's downpour delayed the high school provincial Ultimate final. Even more rain yesterday canceled tryouts last night. A court-appointed forensic psychiatrist is set to testify today about the mental state of an admitted serial killer. Another expert told the murder trial yesterday Jeremy Skibitsky was suffering from schizophrenia when he killed 4 Indigenous women in Winnipeg in 2022. That psychiatrist, called by the defense, told court Skibitsky felt compelled to carry out the killings because he believed he was on a mission from God. Skibitsky has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. His lawyers admit he killed the women, but argue he is not criminally responsible because of a mental illness. Crown prosecutors say the killings were racially motivated, and they say Skibitsky targeted the vulnerable women at homeless shelters. Some firefighters in Thompson are working 24-hour shifts to cover vacancies in that city's fire department. Fully staffed, the Thompson department would be at 24 full-time firefighter paramedics, but currently 5 positions are unstaffed. Thompson Mayor Colleen Smook says new recruits are eager to come to the north, but they often go back down south.
They too want to get closer to home, be closer to families. So a lot of them just come to Thompson basically because they know in 6 months to a year they'll have enough training that they can go other places and get promotions and that.
Thompson and its fire department are working on a new agreement with Shared Health to get more paramedics for the North. As well, University College of the North is asking the province to fund a paramedic program for Thompson. If approved, that program would have 16 seats for paramedics in the northern city. And the Bank of Canada makes its June interest rate setting this morning. Most analysts suggest a rate cut is very much a possibility. It would be the first in more than 4 years, and the bank's decision today will indicate whether it feels inflation is under control. The bank's influential rate currently is at 5%, the highest it has been since 2001. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8, and you can find more Manitoba news as it develops, including the story about what is happening in Niverville with one man shot dead by police. All of it on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
And thanks to Megan Ketcherson in our news department for covering that breaking developing news early this morning or getting on it quickly. So as Heather mentioned, it is very much still developing. So cbc.ca/Manitoba for the latest. I'm going to start with traffic here. I'm just covering for Corey and then we'll loop into our forecast, which is a real mixed bag. But traffic, Kirsty called. So McGilvery at Kenaston, you're losing a turning lane to construction, apparently causing big backups. If you turn down northbound Kenaston, it's also down to just the median lane. So that's really backing up. And the whole construction zone as well, also on Kenaston, still between Scurfield and Rothwell. There's multiple lane closures for the northbound traffic. They're going to extend through June 21st, by the way. So expect delays and use alternate routes if possible. And I also wanted to mention these because it actually is going to set us up perfectly for a conversation we're going to have on the show after 8. The city is proposing to spend almost $750 million to widen Route 90. The mayor says we need it. Some councillors says we don't. So we're going to have a closer look at Route 90, Kenaston. This is specific between Ness and Taylor. So CBC's Bartley Kivas is going to be in to look at that project. But if you're out there commuting or if you're just listening this morning and you want to weigh in, what do you think about $700 million to revamp that major section of Route 90? Do we need it? Do we not? What's your experience? Is it money you'd rather see spent in other places of the city when it comes to construction budget? Or are you someone that says, no, this is absolutely a priority. We've been waiting for it for some time. There's been multiple plans over many years. We'll get the very latest on the widening of Route 90 Kenaston in that section. That's coming up after 8 o'clock here on Information Radio. If you want to weigh in, 788-3205. And if you call now, we can get your calls on the air a little bit later when Bart's on. All right, Abby's been waiting patiently for our regional forecast. What's up?
14 degrees in the city. We started sunny, but that's going to be a transition into a mix of sun and clouds later. And we're expecting 70% chance of showers and possible thunderstorms this afternoon. It will be breezy, and we will be touching a high of 20. Tonight will be mainly cloudy, also chance of showers, and then a similar mix with showers for tomorrow also. Heading west to Brandon, 13 degrees and partly cloudy at the moment. Today, expect a mix of sun and clouds with 60% chance of showers this afternoon. We'll be seeing a high of 18. Moving north to Thompson, where it's 6 degrees at the moment. We're experiencing mist at that part of the province and light showers at this time. The rain will be ending early, and then there's going to be a mix of cloudy skies with 60% chance of showers later in the day, high of 11. Further north in Churchill, 1 and foggy, and it's drizzling at the moment. The drizzle is going to turn into heavy rain this morning with fog patches and a steady temperature staying around 1 degree still. Now, we also have a rainfall warning for that part of the province. We're looking at 50 to 80 millimeters of rain, and this will be tapering off to showers on Thursday. So be advised of localized flooding in low-lying areas, and residents should be cautious near rivers, creeks, and covered as there's a risk of a washout in those areas. Dauphin is at 15, Gimli is at 15, Steinbach at 15, Morris at 15, all going to be seeing a mix of sun and clouds, and there's a 70% chance of showers for most parts of the southern parts of the province today. Winnipeg currently at 14 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, next on the program, Rossbrook House in Winnipeg has one mission. They have long said no child who does not want to be alone should ever have to be. Those were the words of the founder. Rossbrook House has been operating in Winnipeg for 48 years. And that's their mission statement that has guided the inner city youth drop-in for, as I mentioned, nearly 5 decades. The drop-in center now says, though, it is going to stay open 24 hours a day even after the school year comes to an end. But keeping their programming running all summer long is going to comes with a cost, rather. A longtime staff member, Valerie Henderson, joins us to talk more about their plans. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell me, Valerie, why, in your view, it's important for Rossbrook House to stay open 24 hours a day throughout the summer?
Why it's important? Well, we need support to keep our doors open for the children and youth. You know, with the rise of inflation, the financial support from Rossbrook House Sustained Funders is not rising at the same rate. And the children they look forward coming to Rossbrook.
How many children do you see on average a day? What have you noticed about, what brings them there? And tell me a bit about it.
I would say anywhere from 40 to 80 children come there on a daily basis. And they come there for, to get away from their environment. And we have a snack at 4:00 for them. And they come there for their friends, to meet friends and make friends.
And in a 24-hour cycle, what kind of programming do you have if youth are coming there to Rossbrook?
Well, we have night shift, and we have a lot of youth that come for the night shift, and also we have for the summer we have like beach outings, Camp Masqua. We also have like summer games and general outings. And the youth, they're occupied. It gives them less room to make bad choices, keeps them out of trouble.
You have a personal connection to Rossbrook as well, I understand, Valerie. When you think back to yourself as a teen, how old were you when you first came to Rossbrook?
I was 12 years old.
And what difference did it make in your life?
It made a major difference. Major difference. I don't know where I'd be right now.
Did you make connections back there that sort of lasted through your life or helped you sort of become the person you are today?
Oh yes. I started going to school at the Eagle Circle program, and that's what made a big difference in my life.
Eagle Circle program, was that something you accessed through Rossbrook then when you were younger?
Yes, it's an alternative school. Rossbrook has 3 schools.
Mm-hmm.
They have the elementary school, Winnipeg, junior high, Eagle Circle, and the high school, Rising Sun.
In the summer months, when Rossbrook would have been shut down, obviously, after, for different hours in the summer, how many teens would you see on average in the summer months?
Oh, there's quite a bit of them that come there. Like, there's a lot of regulars.
So this need to open throughout the summer, is it because otherwise, does it feel like to have to say to teens, sorry, but we're not open for you?
Oh my goodness, I hope it doesn't come to that.
But in the past, you haven't been open in the summer, right? So this will be a change.
Excuse me? We've been open 24 hours all the time.
Oh, well, pardon me, but this is a change, though, wanting the funding to stay open through those summer months, correct?
Oh, yes,
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah. What do you need to make it happen? You said that more funding is needed to help you guys?
Right. Okay. There's this contest going on. It's called the Great Canadian Giving Challenge. And it's a contest among charities like throughout Canada, and it runs in June. And any online donation that we receive in June, it will act as an entry to this contest. So it's an opportunity for Rossbrook to win $10,000 to support the youth. It's called the Intermediate Leadership Program. The more people give, the more chances we have to win the $10,000.
So you're hoping that financially to keep that, to do what you want to do with summer programming, that people will lean into the Great Canadian Giving Challenge, as you said, that donation drive.
Yes, for sure.
Do you know how much money you would need to keep, to do this?
Oh, I have no idea on that part.
Yeah. What are some
Yeah.
of the success stories besides your own that you've shared that you've seen with teens that make you proud to continue to volunteer with Rossbrook?
Okay. There was a lot of teens when I was, I've seen many generations, a few generations when I'm working there. I've been there for quite a few decades, or a couple of decades for sure. My own son and my grandchildren attend, and most of the youth I worked with when I was a program coordinator, they found their place in life. They come and visit occasionally to thank us for being there, for supporting their ideas and their dreams. And, they're teachers and they're musicians, authors, roofers, city workers, and social workers. It's amazing what they have become.
I love that you keep that connection with everyone years later. Valerie, thank you very much for being with us this morning and highlighting your hopes to generate more funding to achieve staying open through the summer months with full programming. Appreciate your time.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Oh, and one more thing. And can people go to the rossbrookhouse.ca for more information?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to mention it.
All right. Thank you so much.
You take care. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Okay, bye.
Valerie Henderson, and I misspoke there. I think I mentioned in the interview, I used the word volunteer, but she is a longtime staff member of Rossbrook House, as I said when we got her on the line. For more information on Rossbrook, and as I said, 48 years in our community and looking to extend some of their programming through the summer now, but they're in need of funding. You can read all about it on their website as mentioned. So it is rossbrookhouse.ca.
Do you have ideas on how CBC can become more accessible? Well, we want to hear from you. How can CBC become a barrier-free public broadcaster for people living with disabilities? We'd like to invite you to share your ideas with us by registering for our public consultations at cbc.radio-canada.ca/accessibility. With your help, we can make CBC more accessible for all.
Well, speaking of accessibility, it's not easy finding a job if you live with an intellectual disability. But a local organization is hoping to make it a bit easier. They're having a reverse job fair is what they're calling it. We'll learn about it. We'll hear from a young job seeker as well. That's still ahead in this half hour of the show. Right now, 13 minutes to 8, partly cloudy, 15 in Winnipeg. And here's a bit of music from Manitoban Kelly Bado and Love That You Love Me.
You swept in like a hurricane, tearing down my fears and doubts. The broken memories you washed away. Now I know what real love is all about. I can't stop the fire from burning, I can't stop the world from turning. What's meant to be will be. You crushed my defenses. Can't stop my heart from beating. Can't stop this need of needing. What's meant to be will be, and I'll be yours. Oh, I love that you love, that I love that you love me. Oh, I love that you love, that I love that you love me. Love me. No hiding from your love, no. You knew exactly where to find me. I must admit I was skeptical, but some things are just meant to be. I can't stop the fire from burning, I can't stop the world from turning. What's meant to be will be. You crushed my fences. Can't stop my heart from beating. Can't stop this need of needing. What's meant to be will be, and I'll be yours. Oh, I love that you love, that I love that you love me. Oh, I love that you love, that I love that you love me. Love me. that you love, that I love that you love me. Oh baby, I love that you love, that I love that you love me. Oh, I love that you love, that I love that you love me. Oh baby, I love that you love, that I love that you love me. Love me.
Pretty music for a sunny Wednesday morning. That's Kelly Badeau from Manitoba. Love that you love me. It is right now 10 to 8. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're with Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. In Winnipeg, I mentioned it's beautifully sunny right now. It's not going to stay that way. So it's going to be a mix of sun and cloud with a 70% chance of showers moving in late this morning and into this afternoon. We also have a risk of a thunderstorm and a high of 20. There is a rainfall warning also for Tuduli Lake and Churchill. We're looking at amounts of 50 to 80 millimeters possible, and that is from through tomorrow evening. So it's going to be a huge system that is moving through. If you're just waking up on this Wednesday morning, we have had developing news that started early this morning, just broke during the show. Our news department has been following it, and it's taken Megan Ketchison from our newsroom to Niverville this morning. So this is in Niverville. RCMP say there's a large police presence after police shot a person. Both Mounties and the Winnipeg Police Service are on scene. One man is dead. So there's more information as well. And Heather Wells will be in for the latest headline. And that is coming up just before 8 o'clock this morning in advance of our national and international news. But right now, if you want to read more about what's been developing in Niverville, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Well, up next on the program, we're going to have a look at what has been happening with a certain population that you might have been keeping your eye on. I'm not talking about human beings. I'm talking about whales. They certainly have been making the news a lot lately. A recent report in the last month talked about how the types of whales that we're seeing in the bodies of water here in Canada might in fact be changing because of climate change. And if you're watching whales in Manitoba, then of course you're going up north to Churchill. It's whale watching season from belugas in Manitoba that we have here to the humpbacks over in Nova Scotia. But it's also then time for boats and ships in Canadian waters to navigate with caution. A Montreal startup says it can help vessels spot the beloved mammals faster than the human eye. And that might be important. As we did recent reports in Churchill with the growing tourism industry there were concerns about a different craft in the water getting in the way of the whales. CBC's Manjula Silveraja this morning dives into the push to protect the whales with tech.
There's no sight quite like it. A glimpse of the white beluga whale near Churchill, Manitoba in the Hudson Bay, or the endangered North Atlantic right whale in the Bay of Fundy off the coast of New Brunswick. Though they are the top predators where they swim, their population is under threat from humans. Take the southern resident killer whale. That's a clip of these whales from Ocean Networks Canada, an ocean observing facility at the University of Victoria. Sadly, southern resident killer whales are listed as endangered under the Species at Risk Act. As of the end of 2023, there are only 74 in existence. The Government of Canada has identified 4 threats to their survival: availability of salmon for food, contaminants in the water, physical disturbances, and noise. The World Wildlife Fund reports that all whale species suffer from the danger of ship-whale collisions and the underwater noise of vessels. The noise can be disorienting and disconcerting for whales who depend on sound waves to navigate and communicate with each other. That's where Emily Chary-Tissier comes in. She wants to help save the whales by giving ships the ability to spot whales with AI.
Mobius is our AI tool that detects marine animals from aerial images, more specifically. So just a normal HD camera, either strapped to the belly of an airplane or from a drone.
She is CEO and co-founder of Whale Seeker, the maker of Mobius. The AI is trained on datasets created with the help of marine biologists. Whale Seeker uses a concept called human in the loop, where human experts, in this case biologists, are actively involved in helping the AI model get better. This May, the company received $855,000 in funding from the federal government to improve the detection of marine species at risk. Chary-Tissier says the funds will help Whale Seeker refine the technology to provide real-time detection and miniaturize it so it can be used by a variety of people. Why turn to AI for spotting whales? She says the AI is as good as a human observer in identifying whales, but 97% faster.
Our main goal is to create tools so that conservation can be maximized and the blue economy doesn't suffer as much. We need better data so that we can micromanage a bit more. When is a slowdown area? When is it not a slowdown area? Different shipping lanes, when are they activated?
For years now, governments around the world have been turning to shipping slowdowns to cut down on the danger of ship strikes and reduce noise pollution in the water. Melanie Knight helped kick off one of those, a voluntary shipping slowdown at Canada's largest port. She's the program manager for ECHO at the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. It's a program focused on understanding and reducing the impacts of commercial shipping on at-risk whales.
We work with the shipping industry and the government and Indigenous communities and our environmental groups, and we design areas where we know that the whales are most often foraging and where we know that the shipping lanes overlap with that. And ultimately, that is where the acoustic disturbance could be at its greatest. And so we have asked vessels and encouraged vessels to participate in these voluntary slowdowns where they reduce their speeds from their normal speeds down to, depending on the vessel type, either 14.5 knots speed through the water or 11 knots.
This is the 8th annual voluntary slowdown at the Vancouver port. It runs from June the 1st through to the fall. Melanie Knight says the program has seen a positive response from the shipping community.
These are mariners, they love the waters. And so we have seen an 87% average participation rate.
But Knight says whale behavior seems to be changing, changes that may evolve how slowdowns are put into effect.
Historic data shows that they come in May, June, and stay in the region until October. What we're finding now is that they seem to be coming and going more often throughout the entire year, because sometimes, we see them in December, or we just recently we saw them in early May, and the slowdown wasn't on at that time. And we are looking at these possible solutions and trying to explore if and how a more dynamic approach to the slowdown could be feasible, and if it would help the whales.
Possibly reacting as a port when a whale is spotted by AI in real time? It's still too early to tell. Meanwhile, this June, ECHO received $3.2 million in funding from the federal government to continue its conservation work with southern resident killer whales. It's all in the hope there'll be a lot more of this in the future. For CBC Radio, I'm Manjula Selvarajah.
And check out our CBC Listen app for a really interesting interview Corey Funk, about spotting the Manitoba beluga by its accent. And what do they sound like? Check it out on our CBC Listen app. Let's get into what's happening in the news. Here's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, one man is dead in Niverville after being shot by police. It happened early this morning around 3. Winnipeg police and RCMP are on the scene. A woman is in custody. Another man took off in a stolen vehicle. Now, police are saying the area of Drover's Run is going to be blocked off for a large portion of the day. There is a police presence right around a Shell service station there. We have a crew on the way. We're going to bring you the very latest information as we get it. Our next local news is coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In Winnipeg, 14 partly cloudy. Call us if you have problems. There are some out on Keniston, Route 90, 788-3093. Speaking of which, the city's saying they want to spend almost $750 million. They're proposing this to widen Route 90. The mayor says it's needed. Some councillors say it's not. CBC's Bartley Kivas will be in to walk us through all of this. If you want to call about widening Keniston, Route 90, is it needed or not in your view? Should we spend the money elsewhere? 788-3205. Taking calls on this. Stay tuned. World Report's next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Devery Jacobs went from wanting to be an actor, feeling like she could never be an actor, to now being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe twice. Devery will be here for a conversation about her career, about her new film Backspot, and her life as a real-life gymnast.
I was basically one level away from nationals.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current. with Matt Galloway.
A pub crawl without the booze, a wedding with champagne-free toasts. A growing number of young people are doing their socializing without alcohol, with 25% of Canadians choosing not to drink. A look at sober, curious fun coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We begin in France. A bugler plays the last post as Canadian war veterans, government and military officials and dignitaries remember those who died. The event at Canada's War Cemetery in Beny-sur-Mer is part of this week's 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. More than 2,000 Canadian soldiers are buried there. The CBC's senior international correspondent Margaret Evans was at the service. And Margaret, what is it like where you are?
Well, it is obviously a very solemn place, Marcia, but it's also very, very beautiful. There are 2,048 headstones in this Canadian War Cemetery. The flowers in each row perfectly tended, and the cemetery is surrounded by trees and beautiful fields full of wheat and canola, so it's very, very peaceful. We saw the Canadian veterans come in a row of honor, each one getting applause as many of them were wheeled to their place of honor.
Margaret, what are some of those war veterans saying?
Yeah, we spoke with a number of them, and there are, in fact, 13 Second World War veterans from Canada here. Not all of them are D-Day veterans. 8 of them are veterans of the Normandy campaign, and 4 of them did come ashore on D-Day. Beny-sur-Mer, this cemetery here, is just a bit inland from Juno Beach, where so many Canadians landed. We spoke to Captain William Wilson, who will be 100 in the fall. He was a seaman gunner during that D-Day landing. He was on the ships accompanying the landing troops in, but he had a view from the water.
The surface of the ocean was covered with ships and boats and landing craft, and all pretty well organized, streams all following each other to get killed. Nobody had ever seen anything like that in the history of the world, and I was there to see it.
One of the things he told us, which was echoed by other veterans on this trip, was that they do worry that the world is going to forget them when the generation of veterans moves on. But the people in the villages around and some of the students from local schools here and from schools in Canada say that won't happen. They won't allow this generation to be forgotten or what they were fighting for.
Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Margaret Evans in Beny-sur-Mer. CBC Radio will have special coverage of tomorrow's anniversary. Nala Ayad and John Northcott will bring you highlights of the official ceremony. That is here on CBC Radio 1 at 1 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Atlantic, 2:30 in Newfoundland. Or you can watch coverage of the ceremony live beginning at 4 a.m. Eastern on CBC News Network, CBC Gem, Explore, or on YouTube. The Bank of Canada will make its latest interest rate announcement later this hour, but the bank is seeing some progress in its efforts to rein in inflation, and many economists think we could see a cut in the key overnight lending rate. CBC's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
It's been a rough couple of years. Canadian households have been clobbered by a double whammy of rising prices and increased borrowing costs. Many, especially those with a variable rate mortgage, have been waiting for some kind of sign that the Bank of Canada is ready to cut rates. At its last meeting, Bank Governor Tiff Macklem would only say this.
As we consider how much longer to hold the policy rate at the current level, we're looking for evidence that the recent further easing in underlying inflation will be sustained.
Since then, inflation data came in better than expected. The core measures the bank is focused on are working their way back to target. GDP has remained flat but avoided dipping into an outright recession.
The Bank of Canada has the green light to cut rates right now.
That's Frances Donald, chief economist at Manulife Investment. She says there's still a chance the bank waits until next month to be sure inflationary pressures really are coming to heel. But Donald says the bigger question is is how much and how quickly the bank will reduce rates once it starts.
We think they might have to cut rates as much as 8 times in the next 2 years. That's a really different story than do they start now or in 6 weeks.
So this morning's release should provide more than just today's rate. Watch for details about how the bank thinks the next few quarters are going to look. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Amanda Knox has lost her bid to clear her name completely in an infamous 2007 murder. The American woman was the primary suspect in the stabbing death of her roommate in Italy. The story dominated headlines in Europe and the U.S. at the time. Knox was found guilty. She was also convicted of wrongly accusing a Congolese bar owner of the murder. Knox spent 4 years in jail until both convictions were annulled in 2015. She was reconvicted of the slander charge today. Carla Della Voda is Knox's lawyer.
Amanda is very upset from the outcome of this hearing. She was looking to have a final point of all this 17 years now judicial procedure, but we're looking forward to understand exactly what are the motivation behind, which will be available after 60 days. After the reading of the motivation, we will take the necessary new steps.
Knox was issued a 3-year sentence today, but it will have no practical implication because of the time she already served in prison. Gaza ceasefire talks resume in Qatar today. An agreement is proving elusive. In this country, some families with relatives in Gaza are trying to bring their loved ones here. More than 40 have arrived since the war began in October, but there are concerns about what happens once they arrive. Some Palestinians say Ottawa's promises to help resettle are empty. Nicole Williams has more.
So hard to continue. So hard to do anything.
23-year-old Nisreen Khalidi says it's been a nightmare to get here, and she's still struggling. She arrived in Canada from Gaza last November. Some family killed in the war, others still stuck there. But Khalidi says it's been difficult to even survive here. The federal government does offer work permits, study permits, and temporary health coverage for Palestinian newcomers, but Khalidi says it's taking months to access any of that.
Literally, I lost my job, I lost my home, everything I lost. Then I realized I lost my life.
Nahid Sadiq volunteers to help families resettle here and says many Palestinians who come here have urgent medical needs. They end up on the hook for hundreds of dollars in hospital bills because they're without health coverage.
They realize that no, this may not even be a safe haven for us because we still have so many hurdles.
Immigration Minister Mark Miller says people are entitled to support when they get here. If that's not happening, there's a problem.
We would probably work directly with those groups and making sure that if there are problems in the system, that we get them ironed out quickly.
Advocates say they're hopeful the minister will act to provide Palestinians even the basics needed to survive. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Toronto.
Officials from BC are traveling to Washington state today. They're meeting with their U.S. counterparts to find ways to prevent flooding from two rivers. Communities on both sides of the border were inundated with water in November last year. But as Georgie Smythe reports, some BC communities are looking for more help from the federal government.
These are the same citizens that Ottawa has. And if they're not going to keep them safe, then we will.
Princeton Mayor Spencer Coyne is annoyed. He's one of 3 BC mayors who asked for millions of dollars from the federal government's Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. Princeton, Merritt and Abbotsford wanted to build higher dikes and pump stations to prevent future flooding. Mayor Michael Getz from Merritt says the request went nowhere.
We have completely been ghosted.
In a statement to CBC News, Infrastructure Canada, who oversees the applications, says it has funded BC projects in the past, but that their fund gets more requests for cash than money it actually has. In 2021, about 18,000 people were evacuated in BC after floods swamped homes and landslides damaged every major highway connecting the Lower Mainland to the rest of Canada. The 3 communities say they're now on the hook for much of the cost to adapt to more intense and destructive weather.
And we need to have all strategies on the table.
But Tara Martin, a professor of conservation science at the University of British Columbia, says her research points less to rebuilding and more to retreating from disaster-prone areas.
The purposeful movement of people and infrastructure in response to hazards.
At least everyone can agree doing nothing isn't an option. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. We have sunshine out there, but don't be fooled. We're expecting rain. Your forecast in a moment, and also news about a developing story that our news department has been following in Niverville. Heather Wells will be in with the latest details literally in just a few minutes here. First, I do want to tell you what's coming up this half hour on the program. We're going to talk about a place where you might be stuck this morning because you've been calling us from Route 90 in Kenniston saying there's backups there. Mayor Scott Gillingham is advocating for a plan to spend more than $700 million to revamp a major section of Route 90, but some councillors say that money could be better spent elsewhere. CBC's Bartley Kivas will be in studio to talk more about the plan and what it could look like. We're asking you what you think about spending money there. 788-3205 to weigh in. And it's not easy finding a job, but if you live with an intellectual disability, there can be some extra challenges. Today, we're going to hear more about a reverse job fair, and we're going to meet a young job seeker as well, so stay tuned. Right now, though, let's get to that developing news. It broke during our show this morning, and it has to do with Niverville. Heather Wells is in with the details. Hi, Heather. What do we know now?
A man was shot and killed by police early this morning in Niverville. That happened around 3 o'clock this morning. A woman is in custody. Another man took off in a stolen vehicle, and there is a police presence at a Shell station in Niverville. RCMP and Winnipeg Police are in the area, and our Megan Ketchison is going to bring us the very latest from Niverville coming up at 8:30. And crews in Winnipeg are working overtime to prevent mosquitoes from hatching. 14 ground crews and 4 helicopters have been busy spraying sites with larvicide. We'll hear more coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi, I kind of was a spoiler alert on this because we started with such a beautiful morning. It's not going to last, though, right?
No, that's not going to last. It's going to get cloudy very soon. We started sunny. It's 16 currently in the city. We should be expecting a mix of sun and clouds later. There's a 70% chance of showers this morning and then into the afternoon period. Also a risk of thunderstorm, and it's going to be breezy, so take that into consideration. We're aiming for a high of a 20 today. Now, tonight will also be mainly cloudy. There's still that chance of showers that would stay with us till the evening period, and it's still going to be breezy. For the last time, we have a rainfall warning for the northern part of the province around Churchill. Heavy rains amounting to about 50 to 80 millimeters expected by Thursday evening, which will taper off to showers. So you should be advised of localized flooding in some areas. Once again, Winnipeg, 16 degrees. Expect sunny conditions for now. It's going to turn to sun and clouds. Then we're going to see some showers. Then we're going to see some thunderstorms, maybe. And then it's going to be breezy throughout the day. And we're going to touch a high of 20.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
I think. We'll get into sun soon. Don't worry. All right. Corey, quick look at our commute.
Yeah, we're actually getting another update. Remember a few days ago, I think it was last week, the city was talking about internal clock issues that are throwing off some of the lights, the traffic lights. So the city says, again, there's this happening again, experiencing loss of coordination in the internal clock of certain intersections, causing delays in traffic flow throughout the city this morning. So if you're sitting there wondering, why am I sitting here? I don't see anything ahead of me. It's because of coordination of traffic light issues that the city is experiencing. As well, northbound Kenniston between Scurfield and Rothwell, there's multiple lane closures for that northbound traffic, and that's actually happening until June 21st for construction. So that's going to be slowing down your commute on northbound Kenniston as well. And finally, Assiniboine Avenue, got a call from Jason Carter. The bike path is being torn up for construction right around the Donald Street Bridge. So that may also disrupt your bike commute this morning. If you see something else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, I just said it, almost $750 million. That is how much the city says it's going to cost to widen Route 90 between Ness and Taylor once interest charges for borrowing the money are factored in. Now, this is a mega project that would also require the city to purchase or expropriate 78 private properties. And it's also something we've been talking about for years. A new preliminary design was published earlier this week, and CBC's Bartley Kivas has been looking into the story. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
Okay, we're going to get to the most recent design in a moment, but first, can you remind us all about the history of this project?
Well, the city's been looking at widening Keniston Boulevard, which is part of the project for decades, but they couldn't touch the land because of the disposition, what they were going to do with the Kapiong barracks land. Now, as we now know, the federal government once tried to sell that land. Treaty One Nations stepped in with a court battle and said, you know what, we should be offered the opportunity to purchase those lands first. They inevitably prevailed, and now the disposition of the former Kapiong lands has been settled. It's now going to be a project called Nawe Udna, and the city is now proceeding with a plan to widen Keniston Boulevard, replace the St. James bridges over the Assiniboine River, and also conduct combined sewer work. And all of this together is a very large project.
Yeah, I remember being out in the neighborhood years ago when they were having sort of consultations and talking to people who were worried about expropriation. So tell us about the latest design study then, what you've looked at here.
Well, you are correct. There have been studies about alignments. At one point, they looked at moving Keniston east through, like Route 90, east through different parts of River Heights and a number of different possible alignments. But now they're actually getting into a more detailed design, a Class 3 estimate that is a more specific estimate that is bound to vary less above or below and come in at closer to what the actual price will be based on the best available engineering that they have. So they contracted a company to go look at that, and they now have a design that shows specifically where the streets are going to go, what properties will have to be expropriated, what intersections will look like, the normal things that any municipality does when they are engaging in a plan like this.
Now, you might have already alluded to some of this with talking about the sewer work and all the different things, but the project cost is pegged at $737 million, correctly here, the full number. How does that break down?
$586 million for the construction alone, and then $151 million in interest charges if the city fronts all this through borrowing, if there is no help from the province and the federal government. This was a promise by the mayor, Scott Gilliam, when he ran for office in 2022, and it was probably the thing that he received the most criticism for during that campaign, not just from his competitors, but from some members of council.
There are many private properties in the way of this project, so what will happen to them?
Well, they're not all private. There have actually been properties that have actually been, if you've driven down Keniston, that have already shut down. This study says there'll be 78 private properties that have to be bought and probably some expropriated if the city can't come to an agreement, plus another 14 city properties the city of Winnipeg has to give up. And in addition to that, 50 Department of National Defense properties. The city can't expropriate properties of a higher level of government. They have to come to a deal to acquire them.
Got it. So we're talking, if you're driving in that area, about some of the houses you might see on Keniston that would have been part of Kapiong and where people would have lived, and then also maybe even into Lockwood. I mean, there's a lot of questions about how far it's going to extend.
On the east side of Keniston, further north on Keniston, but still in River Heights.
Why does the mayor just say this is needed? You talked about the fact that it was part of his platform and his promises, but why does he say it's needed?
Well, the mayor says it's needed because he is talking about how it needs to go. Keniston should go from 2 lanes wide to 3 lanes wide, and the condition of the road is not doing well. He cited the trade benefits of having that transportation corridor move more quickly. The report that came out yesterday also extolled environmental benefits of not having people idling in there. We're going to get to that in a minute, as well as reconciliation benefits for serving Nawe Udna.
And critics, who's opposed?
Well, specifically opposed to the entire project on council right now. Yesterday, nobody I spoke to, but a lot of concerns raised about either the report or the plan. So St. Boniface councillor Matt Allard, he says he wants to read this report before he decides whether he's opposed to it or not. There isn't no one's really criticizing the idea of replacing the St. James bridges. But Matt Allard says, okay, we've got this detailed design, and what about all the other projects that are out there that could benefit from some work. Why are we not looking at everything? Why this one right now? There is Councillor Ross Eady, who supports the project, but there were two projects that Gillingham promised in the 2022 campaign. The other one was the extension of Chief Peguis Trail. So Ross Eady said, where's that plan? How come this one's coming first? He also wants to know about a plan for the shuttered Arlington Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's St. Vital Councillor Brian Mays. He sits on EPC and he said, okay, I mean, get real, environmental benefits. I mean, almost every study about road widening, he points out, says that traffic simply increases to
when you
meet
widen
the
road
capacity that you've increased. So he says, let's not talk about purported environmental benefits, his words, and just like talk about the project on its own merits.
So what's the next step then for the project?
Well, this report is winding its way through City Hall, but quite frankly, the city has to assemble money for it. And the money has to come from somewhere in the actual planning. It'll be a couple of years before substantive work can start on this. There's also another little piece here that's interesting in the background is the city for the widening part. They have yet to come to an agreement with Treaty 1 nations about whether they can just buy a portion of Nauiona outright or lease the land. And if you're the First Nation, First Nations plural, a long-term lease is more financially benefit. If you're the city, you'd rather just buy the land, pay it out once, and move on.
Got it. All right, Bartley, lots of moving parts here, lots of history. Thank you for coming in.
And as you mentioned, some parts that aren't moving so much this morning.
Bartley Kivas, senior reporter with CBC Manitoba. We got a call on this.
Good morning. This is Nick Donaldson. I'm calling regarding the widening of Keniston Boulevard. Apparently, this is going to be something like a $700 million project. Now, widening Keniston Boulevard literally will be throwing good money after bad. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be fixed or upgraded because it is a heavily traveled route, but adding more lanes is not going to solve anything. For example, in North Winnipeg on McPhillips between Jefferson and Leela, several years ago, they widened it to 3 lanes each way with the hope of reducing traffic congestion. The traffic congestion on that section of McPhillips is worse than ever, and McPhillips in general, the traffic congestion is worse than ever. And that's not even with the Arlington Bridge being closed. Adding more lanes does not solve traffic problems in the long term. It makes them worse. We should take some lessons from our neighbors to the south, because they've done that in many cities, and it's just been a mess and not solved anything. That's my 2 cents. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that. Please call us about Keniston, 788-3205, if you want to weigh in. Well, up next on the show, finding the right job is a lot of work. Writing resumes and interview prep are tough skills to master, and living with an intellectual disability can make all that process a little bit harder as well. But there's an event today at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. It hopes to make the whole thing easier, the whole process. It's called a reverse job fair. 42 candidates will have a chance to pitch themselves as 50 potential employers stop by their booths. I spoke with one of those people earlier this hour in studio. Jordan Esquega was in studio, joined by his support worker, Tamar Sharp. I was also joined by Andrea Villeneuve, Manager of Employment and Development and Public Relations with SCE LifeWorks, which is putting on the event today. And I started by asking her what barriers people who are living with disabilities can face when it comes to finding a good job.
I think that the barriers that they face are probably the same barriers that other people face when they're going into the workforce. Am I qualified enough? Are my skills enough? Can I connect with the employer in a way that is meaningful? And I would say that, yes, sometimes we do have a few extra barriers that come in, but there's nothing unsurmountable. Mm-hmm. And it's really great to have an opportunity to show the skill sets that our folks have.
I've done a lot of interviews about the you said the extra barriers that you hope that employers will be mindful of. Mm-hmm. Can you outline what some of those things are that can be extra tough that you wish employers would think about? Because it's about seeing the ability.
It
right?
is about seeing the ability. When we're talking about being in an environment where folks have disabilities, often that is the first thing that people think of is the disability and not the skill set. And we'd really like to sort of flip that because the skill sets are numerous and they are pretty amazing. And we have lots of great people who could do jobs just about anywhere.
There's this awesome sort of myth-busting, stigma-busting thing that I saw recently, and I'm not going to attribute it because I can't remember, but it just shows people doing their jobs, like whatever it is, working in a garage or working in a restaurant or whatever the job is. And it says, and the person just like looks at the camera like, hey, this is a job that you can do if you live with autism, for example. And it sort of busts all these things where it's just like, of course, but we need to get there, right? We need employers to view
Absolutely.
View applicants as applicants.
Absolutely. Applicants are applicants. When they come your way, they are looking for opportunities and they're not walking in the door if they're not qualified. That's what we want to show people is that we have lots of qualified candidates who are willing and able to work.
I love this reverse job fair idea. It's really cool. So Jordan, are you ready for today? How are you feeling about it?
Good.
Yeah? Okay, good. So what kind of a job are you hoping to get maybe?
Warehouse or in a stock environment like retail.
Got it. Like in a stock environment, like maybe, and you said warehouse, so like moving the things around, like boxes and stuff, and doing that physical work.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it like for you to be preparing for the reverse job fair? Tell me a bit about what you'll do today. You have your own booth?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what will you be doing at your booth?
I'll be like sharing, like introducing myself and just sharing a little bit about what rotations I've done and stuff, and skills and experiences.
What rotations have you done?
My first one, I was at Manitoba Hydro. I was in the mail room, and then my second one was at MDA, which is a bigger warehouse. I was in the medical equipment, and then my third one was at Superlube Auto Center.
So you'll be able to share that you have all that experience.
Yeah.
What kind of skills did you learn through your rotations already?
I learned like my first one. I learned like how to use like the postage machine, the mailing machine. I was delivering mail through all of Hydro. My second one, I was making sure that everything was sanitized properly for like the pails, like the commodes. And then my third one, I check all the fluids onto the hood, make sure they're topped up, and then I change the oil and check the tire pressures on them.
So there's a whole bunch of different jobs where those skills could apply, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you've got lots to show off today.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about this idea. I mean, I love this, as I said, Andrea, that, a reverse job fair. How big of a deal is this for candidates to take part?
I think it's a really big deal. I think our folks are really excited about the opportunity to chat with employers and show what they can do. Getting everybody in one room really does make it easier as the businesses come and go for them to speak to various applicants who might be in the area that they're looking for.
A lot of the candidates taking part today, I understand, are part of a project. I want to get the name right, a program rather, called Project Search.
Yes.
What is Project Search?
Project Search is a school to work transition program. It is for students who are in their last year of high school whose goal is work, and they apply to the program, and if they are accepted, come in and do work rotations in a learning environment as well as learning employment skills. And at the end, it's a dual graduation, the high school and Project Search, and they go on into applying for jobs.
That's fantastic. So were some of the rotations that Jordan was telling me about, was that through Project Search?
That is through Project Search, yes.
Jordan, pretend I'm a potential employer. We'll practice for today. What would you say if someone asks what makes you a great employee?
I'm very dependable. I have excellent work ethic. I'm very on time. All the supervisors I've worked with, I've walked away with references from them.
That's an awesome thing to highlight today. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy your day. Thanks for making time for us here. Just last, Andrea, I have to ask you, if employers are listening, what do they need to know if they want to take part today?
just come by anytime between 10 and 2. We would be more than welcome to have you sign in and interview our candidates. We're set up so that you can do one-on-one interviews if you'd like to. If not, you can just go from table to table and see the different portfolios that are there. We would love to have you there. And come learn a little bit more about SCE LifeWorks and Project Search.
All right. Thank you for being here as well.
No, thank you.
That is Andrea Villeneuve, Manager of Employment Development and Public Relations with SCE LifeWorks, that's putting on this reverse job fair today. And Jordan Esquega, candidate today at the reverse job fair at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. It runs from 10 to 2. Well, just before we turn our attention to the news, the call-in conversation on Radio Noon today between 12:30 and 1 is, what do you think of cell phone usage in schools? 788-3797. If you want to weigh in now, you can leave a message for the call-in conversation. And really quick with traffic, a traffic alert here. We have signal issues that could be around the city this morning due to technical difficulties where there's a loss of coordination in the internal clock of certain intersections. Remember, this happened last week as well. This is causing some delays in traffic flow all throughout Winnipeg this morning. So crews are working to address it. 788-3093 if you need. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 16 degrees. That wind is starting to pick up, and we're going to see clouds move in today. A good chance of showers later this morning. A windy high of 20. And if you're in Churchill and Taduli Lake, you are under a rainfall warning today. We now know of 2 police scenes after a man was shot dead by police early this morning in Niverville. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is in that town just south of Winnipeg and joins us now. Megan?
Well, I'm at one of those scenes. This is at Highway 311 and Cron Road. It's actually Drover's Run. There is a Shell station at Tim Hortons there. It's completely taped off. There is a large black pickup truck with a yellow tarp over it. You see shattered glass around the area, and police are here investigating. They say that this happened around 3 o'clock this morning, and it involved Winnipeg Police, and it involved the RCMP here in Niverville. Now, there is another scene. This is just a little bit away from Niverville on Highway 59 and 305. There is a Winnipeg police cruiser with bullet holes in the windshield, and RCMP are there at the scene. What we're told is that one person was killed after a shooting with police. One woman is in custody, and another man fled the scene, took off in a stolen vehicle, and we're hoping to have more details later today. People in Niverville are shocked. They say this is not something that usually happens in this quiet little town. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. We will have the latest on the story throughout the day here on CBC Radio, but you can also head to our website for more, cbc.ca/Manitoba. The head of Winnipeg's Insect Control Branch says crews are working overtime to ward off an explosion of mosquitoes. 14 ground crews and 4 helicopters have been busy spraying sites with larvicide. David Wade says recent downpours have delayed their work and created more standing water. Still, Wade doesn't think mosquitoes will be a problem for Winnipeggers, even when warmer weather arrives.
I'm confident that numbers will be at a reasonable number. I mean, there will be mosquitoes present, but they won't be at a level where it's overly bothersome to the residents of Winnipeg.
Wade says the city now relies more heavily on a long-lasting larvicide that doesn't have to be reapplied every time it rains. And if a rainy spring is dampening your spirit, you're not alone. Soggy fields are impacting athletes too. Many outdoor sports are dealing with slippery, swampy messes. Nigel Batchelor is at the Manitoba Organization of Disc Sports.
One of the best things about Ultimate is that you don't need very much to play. You just need cleats and a disc. But one thing we do need is a safe playing surface, and that's where the rain's really, been a challenge so far.
Batchelor says Sunday's downpour delayed the high school provincial ultimate final. Even more rain canceled last night's tryouts. Dan Cox at the Winnipeg Minor Baseball Association says safety is an issue, and he says kids can fall on slippery surfaces. Winnipeg and the Red River Valley saw about double the normal precipitation for the month of May. Some firefighters in Thompson are working 24-hour shifts to cover vacancies in that city's fire department. Fully staffed, the department should be at 24 full-time firefighter paramedics. Currently, 5 positions are unstaffed. Thompson Mayor Colleen Smook says new recruits are eager to go north, but they often return back to the south.
They too want to get closer to home, be closer to families. So a lot of them just come to Thompson basically because they know in 6 months to a year they'll have enough training that they can go other places and get promotions and that.
Thompson and its fire department are working on a new agreement with Shared Health to get more paramedics for the North. As well, the University College of the North is asking the provincial government to fund a paramedic program for Thompson. If approved, that program would have 16 seats for paramedics in the northern city. And we are about to learn where interest rates are heading. The Bank of Canada makes its June interest rate setting in the next half hour. And most analysts suggest a rate cut is very much a possibility. It would be the first in more than 4 years, and the bank's decision today will indicate whether it feels inflation is under control. The bank's influential rate currently is at 5%, the highest it has been since 2001. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day, as well as our top story, a shooting in Niverville, a police shooting leaving one man dead. And police currently remain on the scene, both RCMP and Winnipeg Police. We will have updates for you. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Thanks to Heather Wells, Beacon Ketcherson, and Joni Nicolo in our news department this morning. Thanks to our team here, Kevin Ipatebo, as well as Brad Lillies, Abby Adiemi, and Corey Funk, who's here with the last look at traffic.
Yeah, if you're wondering why things are weirdly slow this morning, the city says there's technical difficulties with the loss of coordination in the internal clock of certain intersections in their wording, causing delays throughout the city. So look out for that as well. A northbound Keniston between Scurfield and Rothwell, there's construction. Multiple lanes are closed northbound until June 21st, causing slow situations on northbound Keniston. Last thing, westbound Leela, water truck Mike says that the curb lane for construction is closed along certain chunks of Leela, so keep left to get around that. Causes some pretty big backups for folks.
Abby.
Yep, I tell you, across the province, we're experiencing a mix of sun and clouds with varying chances of showers and thunderstorm, and the breeze is already peaking up in the city, and temperatures ranging from 1 with heavy rain in Churchill and 21 in Steinbach.
All right, thank you too. Appreciate it. And Corey, I should out myself to the YouTube listeners. Sometimes, you forget you're on TV. So something happened with an audio cue I was expecting, and then I just went, whoa!
Yeah. And didn't see me also doing the same thing behind the glass, so we're like, what?
That's the radio dance for what? What's going on?
Yeah. You got to watch YouTube. It's really exciting stuff going on there.
You can subscribe anytime online to our CBC Manitoba channel. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to CBC and being part of our morning. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. We're live at Norquay School in Point Douglas tomorrow for a special community show.